Everybody have a copy? All right. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from May 28th?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in
The only-
favor?
I'm sorry, the only discussion was,
Yeah.
is it this one that says school building committee meeting minutes, third floor, 7 PM?
For the high school.
It
For
says
the
middle
school.
high school.
On front.
Oh, I got
Is it in this?
Oh, I'm
packet?
sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one.
No, we
No,
didn't.
okay.
No, you gotta print out your own.
I think we're all gonna have to maintain 2 files, folder files. Because it will get very
Rob, would you like to look at
complicated.
mine?
Huh?
Would you like to look
No,
at
I have that.
Okay,
I was
okay.
confusing.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about the other one.
Okay. Oh, so do you have a comment on these?
No.
Okay. All right. All right, no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? I
Abstain.
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 All right, how many in favor? 3. George, you voted in favor, right?
3 in
Okay,
favor.
Okay.
Is this
Yeah.
high school?
Yes.
Okay. What did I do with them? Oh, where's my agenda? Sorry. Okay. And then there's one invoice. This month, we only have an invoice from municipal. DRA will start billing us next month for the middle high school work. So the invoice for this month is for $1,620 from municipal for the middle high school. Anyone like to make a motion to approve,
I make a motion, we pay the municipal invoice for $1,620.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this one? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes. You guys can sign that?
yeah.
$1,200 just to say it.
Okay. Oh, that's the old one. That's the old one. Okay, Carl is going to get us started, give us an overview of the schedule for the project.
Pat can.
Oh,
Yeah,
Pat?
actually,
Could
I
you
passed out,
summarize
I was
that?
just gonna do just an opening, just a quick recap and a refresher of what we had as a kickoff meeting. Everybody should have a copy of a single sheet, which actually details the kickoff meeting, I should say conference call we had with MSBA. Ellie and Michelle participated, Mike participated, Carol, Peter, Kyle, Courtney.
You gave us this before, correct?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just to really just refresh everybody's recollection as to what was arrived at that meeting. Second bullet down talks about the enrollment. Again, as far as they're concerned, the enrollment part of it was submitted last submission, and they accepted that as complete. And then the schedules down below, again, those are still in place. We're looking to submit on August the 8th. And there are 2 other meetings coming up, July 9th and July 30th, where there'll be other decisions to be made so that Kyle can move forward with the design. And then there's the required MSBA facilities assessment meeting, the 28th or the 11th, where they allow us to come in and simply talk about what's been submitted to make sure they're all set. And then they'll move on the 2nd of October, that's their board meeting. They will approve the preferred alternative, and that gets you into the schematic design stage, and that is scheduled for 2/21. And the board meeting on 4/4, which will have you all set up with prices for the May town meeting. The second last bullet talked about what MSBA at that point indicated that the previous submission, there was a lot of information that they would accept as final, subject to any modifications and changes that were made. And the third line down in that second last bullet talked about, as far as they were concerned, that the educational program, space summary, floor plans, and response to DESE were basically approved, subject to any modifications and changes that were made based on discussions with the school department and so forth. And then we talked about having meetings, and this was again dated April 5th, having meetings to obviously address everything. And we have, again, like I said, participated in the review of existing conditions with the engineers on 2 occasions, and I've had ongoing discussions with DRA and obviously the administration and building committee members. So with that, Kyle and Courtney can take it from here. But right now, we are still on schedule with what we committed to MSBA, which dovetails in with the overall program and schedule for the transition into the new Pembroke.
Okay. Actually, just one question. So the facilities assessment meeting, should a couple of us try to attend that? Is that one that we attend?
Somebody should. It's always helpful
Okay.
to have somebody. It could be Carol, it could be a member of the building committee, it could be as many individuals as want to participate.
Okay.
Yeah,
The principal. Carol.
Mr.
and the
Lucia?
principal.
yeah.
So that is on 8/28 or 9/11?
Yeah, they
Just
have
if
to,
you
they have to let us know. Those are the two dates that they
wanna
have for
Put those
those.
dates
Those are
in
the
your
two dates.
calendar.
They'll let us know.
We'll let you know as soon as we know.
And that meeting will be,
And it's in Boston.
In Boston.
It's in
MSBA.
Boston at the MSBA
Yeah.
office. And, I mean, typically they, just from previous, I mean, usually it happens in the morning. You leave 8 o'clock in the morning generally, and you're home by 1-ish, give or take.
Pretty much, yeah.
Is
Yeah.
just to give him a heads up. Okay, and then, all right, so, and just down to that second bullet that you talked about, because we had submitted a lot of stuff to the MSBA before, we're still, as far as we know, everything that we've given them, they were on board with, they, you know, they accepted everything we had
That's right.
set them, okay,
Right.
okay. All right, Carl,
Okay, to move the process along, we've had a couple meetings with the staff and, as Pat mentioned, revisited the school too, because there's sort of, as you remember, two aspects to this study, and as we move forward, there are what we might call programmatic issues, educational issues. You know, are the classrooms properly sized? Are there enough of them? You know, are they in the right location? Those kind of programmatic issues to be addressed. And then there are facilities issues. You know, is the roof tight? You know, is the heating system working? Is the fire alarm safe? And, you know, basic facilities kinds of issues. So we've had meetings on both topics since we last met.
Did they talk about the drainage issues too?
Yeah, that's something we want to keep in mind, George, because it is definitely one of the facilities issues that has to be addressed as part of this project. But sort of technically, it's outside of our scope right now because it's part of the FEMA grant, and there's another engineer that the town's, you know, looking at if that grant comes through to utilize and designing that drainage to improve the problems on the uphill side of the building. But you'll see as we get into this that we haven't lost track of it. We're keeping it in terms of the scope of the project and the budget of the project. We're keeping it in mind, even though we're technically not designing it at this time. But the MSBA certainly cares about it too. That's why both these things, they care about that the programmatic issues are addressed and that the facilities issues are
So,
addressed.
so I have a question. Is that actually going through with a FEMA grant or?
It's not, I don't have anything to do with it, it's the school.
According to, I spoke to Mike, according to Mike, there should be some word coming through in the fall. The good news was that I guess somebody had placed a call to school administration asking which of the grants they prefer first, which is a pretty good indication that they are obviously thinking about Georgetown. And obviously, the middle high school would be the first grant that you'd receive. But again, there's no information as to whether it's a yes or a no, other than we should be hearing, according to Mike, we should be hearing this fall.
So, when in the process of this project do we need to know whether that has to be incorporated to this project or not if we don't get the FEMA?
Well, I would speculate it would have to be this fall, because you'd wanna, if they're not gonna fund it, we'd have to roll it into the project and
So-
have it ready to go to schematics for
Okay.
January.
So we're not gonna be holding anything up or anything if we hear by the fall with the FEMA, then you'd be able to pick it up right from there, and if we don't get it, then
Right.
include it in your contract.
Right.
Okay, good.
Okay. So just quickly to refresh where we were educationally, remember this project about was initiated because of the elementary school project pulling out the 6th grade from the middle high school. This is the third floor plan. We identified, you know, there are 6 classrooms and 1 science room that were going to be
Mr. Lucia.
vacated.
Why don't you bring your chair up so you can see what he's talking about?
That are going to be vacated when the new Pembroke is built and occupied. we met with Peter earlier today, too, so he has seen these. The other spaces in the school that are gonna be vacated are on the first floor, adjacent to the office area. Here's the office area, here's the main entrance. Right now, there are 3 offices, 2 offices and a conference room that are part of the special ed department that can be relocated to Pearlie when space is freed up at Pearlie by pulling out the kindergarten, first grade. So those couple of moves obviously free up some space, and now the question is, how do we backfill those spaces? We did have a plan last year that was presented and conceptually sort of approved by the MSBA, and to their satisfaction, it made sense to move ahead with this. But in the intervening year, we needed to touch base again with the key departments, with Peter and his staff, and make sure that, nothing had changed. Well, a couple things have changed, not too significant. I'd say 3/4 of everything we had before is still good, but, or even more maybe. One thing that's changed on the first floor a year ago was a home economics space. That's no longer part of the curriculum at the high school. So that space has actually been taken over by a special ed program, Life Skills, but effectively that space has become available too. The other thing that changed in terms of special needs spaces, we discovered that there was a need for another resource-sized room, basically a half-size classroom from what we had previously. But thanks to this move, it has freed up some space to allow that to happen. So together with the facilities issue,
Excuse me, Carl,
touched on,
what is gonna go into that middle area?
we'll get there in a second.
Oh, you haven't,
I
okay.
mean, this year, not by our design, but
Right.
this Life Skills has moved into there.
Okay.
I don't know what took over that space, Peter, when Life Skills moved out there,
Language-based program.
Another special ed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, I'm sorry, that's the half-size special ed program that needs a new home then when we expand this science room. Remember too, these colored plans were identifying the deficiencies, the areas that didn't meet standards and all, so those need to be addressed as part of the proposed moves here. So what we've proposed is sort of summarized in this plan. And you have handouts there too that you can follow along, but up here is the first floor plan where the most significant change is. Remember the diagram, we had all those arrows before, what moves what. It still follows that kind of logic and that sort of thinking that, once the special ed people move out of here back to Pearlie, what goes in that space? So we think about bringing that Life Skills program into that program, into that space there. Once, home economics is out of here, what can we put into there? We're showing the theater arts program, which currently is in this substandard space that will become backstage area. The other areas that we're lacking, chorus is currently being taught on the stage. It doesn't have a home of its own right now, but we can rework this area in here. Again, once the 6th grade moves out, a science room that occupies this space goes upstairs, or actually moves over to here, and that science room goes upstairs, but effectively the science room moves out of here, so that can become a chorus room. So it can have a dedicated home and free up the stage. Then we can, by renovation, create a proper art room. Right now there's sort of a makeshift art room in that former wood shop. Wood shop and tech ed is not going away entirely. It would take over this space right here, and this would become the tech ed space. So it's labeled project room and CAD room. It's really, you can think of it, CAD is sort of the clean part of the room where they plan out the work. The project area is the dirty part of the room where they fabricate things and do sort of hands-on kinds of learning projects there. So those are the major moves on this floor, but programmatically. But the other significant move to notice here, if I pull up the old plan.
Carl, just before you go on, so the computer graphics room and the project room side by side.
Yeah.
And are there any concerns with project room hands-on, whatever they're building, whatnot, dust and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah,
Computers.
it's a little dirty and noisy, but this would be sealed, and they do have sawdust collectors for the few pieces. They're really sort of benchtop kind of drill presses and grinders. They're not big industrial kind of, you know, band saws and things like that. But they do make some dust, but it can be contained in that space, and they do have sawdust collectors for those pieces of equipment. But the other significant change I want to point out that we're recommending, notice the circulation pattern of the school here. There's a stair here, there's a stair here. This corridor dead ends right now at the boiler room. And one of the comments we got last year when we recommended moving this life skills to here was that it's kind of a dead end. It's not in the flow of the school. And it got us to thinking about, well, so are these spaces. They're kind of not quite in the flow of the school either. And so we think that it makes a whole lot of sense to actually create a new corridor through here and return that circulation pattern to a pattern that you know is efficient and clear to understand and so forth. So it's going to take some work because you know the boiler room's in the center of the school and there's some utilities crossing over the ceiling here. There's not a lot of ceiling. It's not going to be a pretty corridor. It's not going to be even 8 foot high. It may even be lower than that in places. So it may be fairly low, but still it'll serve the purpose functionally of reinforcing the circulation like it is on the upper floors, really. And that'll make these spaces more in the flow of the school. And so that helps us too when we want to relocate that SPED resource room that's there. It gets a home right here. And notice the other thing we're doing is there's currently a special ed space in the center of the school here, windowless. And our strategy throughout is to try effectively to get the kids an educational space on the perimeter of the building where natural light is and put the adults or other spaces on the inside. So we're trading off the teacher's room that's here with that special ed room. So the teacher's room would become internal and the special ed room would have the windows on the perimeter there and be accessed off this corridor. So it's in the flow of the school as the Department of Education likes to see. And the other smaller moves here that we heard about, the theater arts space, which currently isn't here. You can see this is a much larger space. Even by taking up this space, it's bigger than what they currently have. And we think that works, and that allows this bit of additional space to be used for a second small conference room and a testing room. Those are two items that came out in our recent interviews as being needed in the school. They're very well located, you know, right adjacent to guidance and administration, can be accessed from the corridor, and testing likewise. Right now they sort of catch as catch can, try to find a space when they need to do testing for a student individually, and again, that can be accessed off the corridor. And we'd make sure these new walls would be soundproof there and here, especially, you know, creating a course room next to anything, but we'd put in a double wall. We'd probably build all these walls out of concrete blocks so they're solid and soundproof. And likewise, the project room, we have to ensure that that works acoustically as well. But we think it's a good plan in accommodating not only the programmatic needs, but sort of getting things in much better places than they were before. The changes on the upper floor are very minimal from what we had previously last year. In fact, they're just relatively minor, and we don't even need to touch on them here, but effectively the idea was, again, getting, you know, special ed classes on the perimeter where they have windows. When they are full-size classes, there are still some specialist spaces like speech or a special ed conference room or office that are internal. But otherwise, we've moved those to the perimeter. We'd be creating a proper computer lab in that library. If you visited the high school recently, you know the computer lab just has sort of a makeshift temporary partition that separates it from the media center. And to use it as a classroom, which it often is, you really want acoustical separation there. So there'd be a constructed wall there. And the other major piece of work is what we talked about before about the gymnasium. The gymnasium, you know, is undersized and unfortunately has safety zone problems. You know, there's not enough apron around the court on all four sides. And what we've shown is improving that at least on the two long sides of the gym by relocating the court. Literally taking down the backstops, moving the court over about 6 feet so that we get the proper apron on this side, with room for player benches for both home and visitor teams. Redoing the bleachers, eliminating those little storage cubes that are on the corners, right here and here, taking down the hard partition, which also eats up some of the bleacher space there in the middle. And when you put those moves together, you actually end up with bleachers that are narrower but longer than what's there now. So you effectively have about the same amount of seating, and you get the right safety apron on either side of the court. In the other dimension, in sort of the base project here, we're not suggesting any change to the physical size of the gym, just adding crash pads to make sure, you know, we deal as effectively we can with the shortened end lines. And if you go in for a layup, you don't have as much room as you would like, but at least you can have a cushioned pad there. And otherwise, the court, you know, is still regulation size court and that sort of thing. You know, we know that there's been an issue in town for a long time. People had hoped that we, at Pembroke, get a big gym with bleachers and relieve the problem that way. We know we can't do that with MSBA. It's not in the cards to have bleachers at an elementary school size gym. We can't oversize the gym and make it eligible. So
What I don't understand is if we can't make this longer, and it would be cheaper for the town to just make a larger gym at Pembroke, somebody should have talked to the state about that. I just find it hard to believe this is the second time that the high school has been renewed and nothing has been done to the gym. And I know a little bit
What we're
is.
gonna propose, Peter, as an option, is to price out making the gym longer in that dimension. To take this wall physically and move it out there. It's not easy, it's not cheap.
Oh, I know.
It's gonna
Well,
be
that's why
expensive,
I think
but-
it would be cheaper to make a larger gym at the Pembroke School than it would be to do that.
But I think it's not a question of even whether you're willing to pay for it. The MSBA doesn't want to.
Well, the MSBA came out and
muck
looked at all
up the
three
project
schools.
by having a mixed sort of bag in something that they can't easily separate out the cost and say, well, this part of it's yours because you're making the gym bigger, this part of it's ours because it would have been an elementary school gym. They are, hesitant about trying to separate out those kind of costs. So even if you wanted to, they, and they've already approved the project, so we can't go back and change the Pembroke gym anyways, even if we could convince them otherwise. So the option here is to suggest, let's look at what's the cost to expand the gym in that dimension. We're only off by maybe 6 feet. So if we could make the,
Well, I think that,
it's gonna be a lot of money to expand, but we could
I think a
price
couple
it out.
things on that. Did I interrupt you?
So-
Go ahead, Doug.
You sure?
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead, no worries.
By taking down the end wall, it doesn't mean that you have to take down the whole roof, because the structure goes crosswise. So I would imagine that you
Right.
could just build out the outer
Temporary
part, put
shoring.
on a new roof, and then take down the wall, most likely,
And so
something like that.
that was gonna be, so Mike, so that's why
And-
you can't go in the other direction.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
yeah.
then you'd have to take
Right.
off the
Oh,
roof
yeah.
structure and
This is
make
like-
new
I
structure.
think you're in the ground there anyway.
Right,
The
but we
roof
don't,
goes
we
this
don't
way?
need it
Yeah.
in the length.
So the span
I
goes
mean, in the
sideways
width.
on
We need
this.
it in the
The
length.
span goes this
Well,
way,
you need
but also
width
there are
for the
issues here too. I mean, we
stands.
have to look at what we're
But-
disturbing to go that way.
But one thing I'd recommend
We're gonna
is-
have about the same amount as we had.
One thing I'd recommend is yeah, maybe we could get away with 5 to 6 feet, and it would give us some proper clearances. But once you're into the construction, you're into the construction. So let's look at bringing it out to a point at which it makes sense, cost-wise and everything, where you're not adding a ton more money to
Yeah.
move it out another 10 feet maybe, or
It just
12
came
feet.
up. I'm not sure where that point is, Jeff, because
Yeah, no,
We just got
I'm
the
not
structure.
asking for an
Yeah.
answer here, because it would be hard, because there's ledge there, there's everything else, but
Yeah.
there's probably a point beyond the minimum that you could move it out and not have a cost, and then would get that much more room in the gym to make it even better.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're gonna do that. I think it can't hurt to get that information.
I mean, who knows, you might
Yeah,
even
is
be able
there-
to put bleachers
I
down
was
on
just
the
gonna
end
say,
wall
you
too.
put more bleachers at the
Yeah,
end.
but generally that's not desirable.
Yeah.
they're not great seats
That's
to
for
watch the
school-
game.
that's
But at
for the
least it would
school
make
They're very
band.
small,
The
but
length.
School
That
band.
would make the
the
length.
the advantage
Or the
might
Blue
be.
Crew or whatever, but at least there'd be more
Yeah.
room,
Right.
you know?
The
And I think-
advantage might be to save one of these little corner storage units because they actually support a mechanical unit.
It's a big unit right
So
up on
they're
top of
providing
that
some
area.
structure in that we'd have to replace by hanging the unit from the current structure. Maybe we'd save one and by pushing that down. So we'll take a look at that.
And you guys, you're gonna check on what the actual, because when we were talking about it today, what the actual regulation is
Yes,
for,
yes.
for the
If
length.
we were
Does
to do
anybody
this-
know that? Like, so, you know, the court's this big, what is the regulation space that you need between that and the crash
They're
pads at the end?
standards, they're
It's
standards.
not a regulation in the sense of, you know,
Well-
that the court is 50 feet by 84 feet.
Well,
That's a
here's one,
regulation.
here's one, if
It's a
it's,
safety
It's a
standard.
safe, well,
If you have a
exactly.
safety standard,
You know,
it's
right now we
4
have
feet.
schools saying that they don't wanna play in our school
Yeah.
because they don't think it's safe.
if you were to
So-
build a new high school gym right now,
What?
well, I know we have this space there, but what would be the length that you would put, you know, on that court, I guess?
I think it's like
Question,
6 to
right?
10
I
feet
guess
that
that's
they
hard to-
recommend or so, isn't it?
In this dimension, it's 6 feet.
Yeah,
beyond
six
the
to
end
10 or
line
so.
of the wall.
So we need 12 then, because.
No,
you-
no, I mean, you don't have 0, you have
Well,
something.
all right, what do we have, 2 or 3 feet on
Have
on
like
each
3
side?
feet
Not
and
much
3
more than
feet,
that.
so
Yeah,
you
so
have
you
6
have
feet,
6
so that's
feet,
why
so
you
you
need
need
another
another
6
six.
feet.
Okay, got it, all
So,
right.
it's in that
Minimum.
ballpark, right, minimum.
I don't think bleachers at the end would be the worst thing, at least you get more kids in there, you know, more room.
I mean, you could do
Yeah,
things
but then
with
you need more
stopping
space.
bleachers, you don't
'Cause
have
then
enough.
you need
But he's talking
space
that,
beyond
higher.
if
that.
it's cost effective to push it out further, yeah.
Something so.
Don't forget, you have storage on the other end of
Yeah.
that wall, and that's very important. We
Yeah.
have very little storage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
out here, we gotta keep in mind when we
Yep.
push this. so.
Well, those are all the factors, but
And
I think you
there's
should
site issues,
at
too.
least look
There-
at it.
There's a retaining wall that comes around the corner here, that we're gonna start running into in
Mhm.
that
that
direction.
you're gonna have,
So-
you're gonna be
I
limiting
mean,
the
that-
space.
Any storage for the new,
I
We're
agree with
moving
you.
it around a
It's
bit,
cheaper to
and
put that in flat
the
new
hope
school.
too is that we're gonna free up a lot of space
We
at
should have
Pearlie.
gone to the state.
And I know it's
but they
not,
came to all three
you know,
of
the
our
most
schools.
convenient for the high school to have space, but there are some things
Should have.
that could move over to Pearlie too. Because there's gonna be a lot of space there, George. So those are the basic moves that are being planned. As I said, we had a good meeting today with Peter and some of his key staff who were involved in the areas that we were just talking about, the music, the art, the tech ed, the gym, and got, you know, positive feedback from them on the proposals here.
How many,
Um,
how many
yeah.
students are in a chorus class?
It could be up to 60 singers, so we're trying to design the room for 60 singers, Peter.
What size is that room?
That's about 1,000 square feet.
So, like length times width?
It's about 25 by 40.
I think they're turning kids down in course right now, 'cause they don't have enough room.
I just think that when you go, you know, to see the chorus sing, you see them in the auditorium. And, you know, it's got the good sound values, and I just think that that's a good place.
Oh, you're still going to perform in the stage.
Oh, I know that.
In the auditorium, yes.
You're not gonna fit all the parents in that little room.
Oh, no, not at all.
No, it's a
No, that's
classroom.
just rehearsal. That's just for class
But
time.
it seems like it's gonna be a packed class once they, you put 60 people in that small area.
Yeah, it is, you know, not the most generous, but we're designing it for 60, make sure they fit. Yeah, and we had to work around some columns. There are columns in there too, like in this room right there. You know, in the middle of the room, there are gonna be some freestanding columns. But we think the clear span is big enough that, you know, the conductor can be in the middle and the singers will be, you know, unobstructed view to the conductor.
What would
Make
be a
sure-
normal high school size chorus room? Is that,
It might be 1,200,
and this is how many, I'm sorry?
this is 1,000. Yeah.
I think the other thing, I know it's a minor thing, but it looks pretty tight where you enter into the gym with given walls, so I don't know if you guys looked at that to make sure that the doors aren't coming out onto the, no, the other side, yeah,
Here?
right there.
Oh, tight, you mean?
Oh, it's like,
To the court
it's
or
close to
tight-
the
Yeah,
six
so
foot
the
high
doors aren't in the proper spot of where the
Yeah, where the bleachers
court
are.
is. Well, where
Yeah.
the- yeah, in
There's
between
some
The
the.
doors do swing out. 'cause
Yeah, I
of
know that, but
egress,
still, you wouldn't
yeah.
want, you know, you can't put a pad on a door,
Yeah.
you know, when somebody goes flying at it.
We can change the hardware so that it doesn't project and be as much of a,
No, that's true,
Yeah.
but I think you just gotta take a look at that corner and
Yeah.
see what's needed.
yeah, that'd be another reason to have more space to
Yeah.
free that up. What we passed around is what we talked about doing for this project. And this is really an introduction so that we can talk about this next time and the subsequent meeting if necessary. The scope of this project is defined by a couple things that we talked about. Programmatic issues that are required sort of to satisfy educational needs, and remember accreditation is a concern here, and the facilities issues that need to be addressed, the ones that can't really wait, that are related to making these things happen. But beyond that, there are a couple categories that we created that are labeled recommended and optional. And we want you to read this over at your own leisure and take it home and be prepared to talk about it in what is it, 2 weeks? Our next meeting is 2 weeks.
The 9th.
The recommended column are things like, well, I think the best example is the roof. Under the required column, we've only included patching the roof, because there are a few clearly identified leaks that need to be addressed, but there's been some patching going on. It's sort of been semi-maintained over the years. But under the recommended category is replacing the entire roof as part of this project. So that's kind of symbolic of some of the other things where under mechanical and electrical, there might be some things that, once we're into a significant renovation of this area here, we're going to be doing some electrical work, some mechanical work, ventilation and so forth, that it might make sense to carry a little bit further in other areas. Or there might be some things that are nearing the end of their life, and within 5 to 10 years, you'd be, looking at investing your own money at 100%, Georgetown, versus if it makes sense to be part of this project, and the MSBA considers it, appropriate, it might be able to be included and get reimbursed, too. So,
Right, so I just want to, just so we're all clear, so this required amount that Carl is talking about, this came about from when we did the study, 6 months ago,
Right,
8
and
months
we
ago?
just
When we did
updated
the
it slightly,
expanded study,
yeah.
when the MSBA came, and, when we realized that we were just gonna pull 6th grade out, so that required list is basically what we had already submitted to MSBA when they invited us into the program for the middle high school.
and that
So that's-
includes the drainage, too. There's a placeholder in there for drainage.
On the
But not under
capital-
required,
on the
though,
capital-
right?
Under required,
Oh, yeah, okay,
$1
okay.
million.
Yep, that's right.
So where it says capital repairs?
Yes,
Yes, so that $1 million,
Have the,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
yes, Rob.
Is, yeah, right, so that's for the drainage, so that does not include anything coming in from FEMA right now.
So that's
Right.
what I just wanted to clarify. It's listed under site accessibility for upper fields. Is it,
Oh,
Oh.
It's in the
That-
wrong
is that
thing.
just a?
that meant to go up one
Yeah.
line,
Yeah.
Rob.
It should be with the site
Is there
drainage.
going to be something about site accessibility?
There could be,
Could be.
yes.
Okay.
Again, not probably required, but it might be in the optional category to think about, how do you get up there? Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's how we looked at this. So the first column does follow pretty much what we had talked about last year, and somewhere between 4 and 5 million. These are very ballpark prices, because we haven't scoped it out yet. We haven't worked with our professional cost estimator. That's still to come after we sort of narrow down and get to the preferred option here. But the recommended are things that either our consultants or ourselves, saw in going through this and looking at the facility. The optional, you might say, are more things we heard in meeting with the administration and the staff as things that might be nice to do while we're, doing this project, or things to consider, things that aren't quite, what we would have if we had a new school sort of thing. But, you can read through it, and the idea is that we try to narrow this list down next time so we can focus on a scope of work to move forward on. And we don't technically need to nail this down for the August 8th submission to MSBA. That's not literally when we're voting on the cost of the project to MSBA, but we're voting on the direction, the option to renovate and plans of a certain style. So, but we should, that's when they'll be seeing it for the first time, and when they'll be able to give us some feedback as to whether things are eligible for reimbursement or not, too. even though it won't be definitive, but at least give us some idea.
And I think things have been already done by ESCO.
We went through that already, George, and hopefully eliminated any duplication here.
Okay.
That was purpose of one of our meetings a couple weeks ago. They have changed all the light fixtures, for instance, they've updated some HVAC equipment and controls. We've taken those out.
So when the engineers and the consultants are going through the school and, you know, whether they're working on this list or not, the one thing that I would like to know is, on this list, you know, is there anything that they've come up with that has, basically, we, as Georgetown residents, are gonna have to replace within the next 5 years? I think that's also important to know, if they could put, you know, some maybe 10
Yeah,
or,
we could get maybe a little more
you know,
specific.
yeah, you know, if, you know,
That would
within
be
5 or
useful.
10 years.
I mean, the roof
because-
is a great example of that.
Right, right. We, you know, there are certain things, I mean, if they say, you know, you might need to replace something in 20 years, well, that's a little different than 5.
Yep.
You know, so if we could get, you know, a little more information about that. And then, you know, obviously, once we submit to the MSBA in August and we start hearing back from them on what is reimbursable and what's not, because, you know, my guess is, you know, by the time this project is done, we're probably looking at least 3 years, give or take,
Right,
depending
right.
on what
That's the
work
other
has
thing
to be
Keep in
done.
mind, this project's not
I
gonna
mean-
start until, for the most part,
Some-
some things
some-
could.
right.
But for the most part, you know, until Pembroke is ready to be occupied, and you pull out the 6th grade and you free up that space to start doing the work. So we do
Right.
have to think about what's the condition of the school gonna be at that time.
Right, so
you
we
know.
still have.
I saw on the
that,
schedule
but-
that construction would go March to September, it would be a 6-month construction project, is that accurate or no?
I think a lot of it's gonna depend on the
Depends on the
scope.
scope of
It's gonna
project.
depend on what it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
it could
somebody,
be, it could be a 6-month job, it could be, you know, year and a half job based on the phasing you're gonna do, so I mean,
Right.
until
And
you
like
define the
the
scope.
drainage, we're probably not gonna do anything on the inside till the drainage
No,
is
but the
fixed.
internal part, with kids in there,
Right.
you know, that's.
Right.
Yeah, we would
So-
obviously try to do as much as we can in the summer.
Right.
Right, and get that,
But, yeah, that's another thing that we need to be thinking about is, you know, if there are some areas that just are, take up too much time and effort to accomplish in the summer, we may need to think about having portable classrooms or some kind of staging area that we could offload, you know, some space on. If there's not enough space to do it, you know, within there, we gotta think about that at this time, as well.
well, with, I mean, obviously, we're freeing up some classrooms by taking the 6th grade out, so when we move the 6th grade out, could you put
Right.
temporary classrooms in those current 6th grade classrooms before we move into that whole configuration, so we don't have to pay
Right, I
for
mean,
portable
there's
classrooms?
ways to stagger it like that.
You know, to
Yeah.
do
Early.
something, I'm hoping that, you know,
Right.
maybe we wouldn't have to rent portable classrooms.
Exactly, but we need to think
I
about
don't
it, that
think-
constructibility is part of the.
Start
the
thinking,
scope.
Peter.
Most of the construction is going on in non-academic areas, like
Really?
down in the, I think the big thing is,
Yeah.
you know, when you move the special ed offices over to Pearlie, in that area, I mean, we can do without that area, it
library.
really isn't affecting classrooms and
Yep.
things like that.
Mhm.
You know, and maybe we have to have, you know, art and, just a CAD program without any machines or anything like that while they're doing this and.
Yeah,
move
we may be
upstairs.
only talking about a month or two, so we may be able to take a corner of the library and make, you know, a classroom there or two and
Yeah.
to make up for the loss of some space to give it, but that's what we need to think about.
Right, but actually, as we're going through this process, and, you know, even talking with Carol, you know, there could be some space at Pearlie that we could potentially use for those couple months as well.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
so,
yes,
you know, everyone's just gonna
Right.
have to kind of work together, because if we can not incur a cost of
Right.
the
right.
portable
Renting.
classrooms, that would be nice, so.
But also, so if I'm reading this correctly, this project could be anywhere from, you know, 4.6 million to 20 million. Right?
That sort of ballpark, yeah, yeah.
Sort of, but keep in mind, I think that there's some of the stuff overlaps a little bit too. And a
That was
lot
the
of it's
question.
not.
Well,
There
like, for
is-
example, the roof, you know,
Right.
repair, like, these 3 columns are totaled, but if you have roof repair for 75,000, and then you have the full roof redo for 400,000.
So the question here that is
There's
the
a-
gym reconfiguration is
That's
600.
not on here.
No,
What-
600
it's on
over
here.
here.
Yeah, that's doing what we
That's-
suggest.
And then the gym expansion, is that an additional 9 or is it a total of 9?
That's not on here.
That's an additional 9,
That's an additional.
yeah,
So it'd be 1.5.
yes,
So these numbers are hard, okay.
right.
Yeah, I can't take the total.
Can't take the total.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
okay, Carl, do you have anything else on the middle school?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
So for everyone, just, you know, take a look at this, you know, because it will, for the next meeting for the middle high school, we'll be, you know, starting to hopefully get a little more information, talk about this, talk about things that we think are gonna be important. Hopefully we'll get some direction from, Carl, the consultants, you know, a little more information and be able to make some headway on that. Okay. So, we need to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the School Building Committee for the Pembroke School, June 18th, 2013. We do not have any public comments, any public at this time. We'll move right on to approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them? Anyone like to make a motion? Would anyone care to make a motion to approve the minutes from May 28th?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
The only discussion that I had was this a 7 o'clock meeting or a 7:30 meeting?
It was a 7:30 approximately. It was after the high school meeting ended.
So that would be one
Oh, it's
correction.
okay.
And then it would be helpful to me to see that there's a Pembroke label to the school building committee meeting minutes.
Yep.
Yep.
Fix that going forward.
Okay.
100% right.
Any other comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain. I wasn't there.
I abstain.
Motion carries. All right, we have several invoices tonight. There's an invoice from DRA for $353,640.60. Municipal, $15,465. This was, it's called North of Boston Media Group. It's the request for qualifications that we had to put in the paper. That was $261.62. And the last one is for Unibank for $500, which you did not get copies of. It's just the financial advisory fee that we're required to pay, for a grand total of $369,867.22.
Do you have the PSS 7 in there?
That's not an invoice, yeah.
No,
Oh, it's not?
no,
Oh, we just have to approve to go forward with it? Okay.
yeah.
That's not an invoice, that's a
Okay.
contract matter.
So can I hear a motion to accept the $369,867.22?
For DRA.
For
It's
all,
DRA,
all of the ones I just read,
Municipal.
for everything I just read.
municipal, 4 invoices.
North of Boston Media Group and Unibank.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Just a question, I just wanted to, so Pat, you're all set with these?
Yes, yeah, we've checked them, looked at them, yeah.
Okay, any other? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Pass that this way to be signed. All right, correspondence. Everybody, I believe on the committee received a letter from the Carpenters Union, and that will be passed forward to the qualifying committee also to review.
Will we get the chance to just talk about that?
After the, it's not worth spending time on it till we see if they even make the qualification cut. The companies that they're referred to.
Yeah, you don't wanna talk about it before they make them selections, so that they're not on the list? So we have to consider that?
No, because they might make the list. We have to call all the references, I mean,
Well, I think even that information that's passed on has to be verified.
right.
And everything, because, I mean.
Just
stuff
because they
comes
said
out,
it doesn't
so.
mean it's true.
Oh, I know, that's why I'm saying
Right.
that's why I'm asking to talk about it. I guess what I'm wondering is why you would not wanna talk about it beforehand and verify it and get all that information. Maybe we can't talk about it tonight, but to have that information in hand so that before they select, they know what the committee's thinking. It would to
They
back
can't
into
select
it.
until it's been verified. That would be the purpose of the
Well,
committee, yes.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Rob, I think one of the objectives of having a pre-qualification committee is to make
Yeah.
sure that the review of applicants is even-handed,
Yeah.
and that everyone's information is considered equally.
Yeah,
And so you want to be careful not to discuss one
Sure.
contractor solely here, either for the good or the bad.
yeah.
And, you know, the same applies for checking references. If you check references in a certain way for one, you have to do it for all 90 contractors we have. That's why it's tasked to a subcommittee as opposed to the full committee. It is a lot of work, partly because you have to treat them all equally. So I don't think we want to take one out of context.
In general, have you ever received this kind of correspondence before?
Yes.
Yes.
On
Yeah.
every
For the,
job.
on every job for the same group?
People.
So it's just.
And-
that-
and
It
others.
varies, yeah, I mean, it varies
others.
depending on
All
the
the
situation. you
bids
know.
come in.
Yeah, I think that's what Rob's talking about, is what should we be expecting, getting this type of
Oh,
correspondence?
would we expect any other correspondence? That's a
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, you
Yes.
probably will get some more, yeah.
Yes.
Which the qualification committee should be reviewing and vetting all the way through, yeah.
There was some
Yeah.
received today
Yeah.
by the selectman's office
Yeah.
from the Masons,
Yeah.
the Masons, regarding one of the firms that submitted for pre-qualifications. It happens on every job, and it happens every
Yep.
single time.
So that way, to keep it fair, everything will go through the pre-qualifications first.
I mean, just our experience has been, we've done this, you know, since they started the whole program. But it's always been handled by the qualification committee. They go through the whole shoot and match. Qualification committee is fair-minded. They go through the same process with everybody so that all the dialogue stays within that particular category. And that's why you have a diverse, you have an architectural rep, you have an OPM rep, and then you have two people from the town. And they go through it extensively and check all the references and do the same thing with every one of the contractors, openly and fairly. And then we'll bring back that information to the full committee.
And that's when we'll have our discussions. Okay?
We've done that the same way on every single job for the last, I don't know, 10 years.
All right, old business. Did we have any old business? I don't think we do. All right, I guess we'll jump right into the new business. We're gonna talk about the, CD status. Pat?
That would be Kyle, and then we'll go right into the various cost
You
situation.
want, okay. We'll
Yeah,
do the other.
contract, the contract
CD
documents.
stands for construction documents. That's the stage we're at here as we move the project along, getting closer to bid, and completing the plans and specifications. The most recent milestone we've hit is 90%. We've given that set of documents to the cost estimators. Technically, we haven't filed the 90% documents with MSBA yet, but we're very close in that regards. And you know, I think the cost estimates themselves are the best reflection of where we're at, and otherwise there've been no wrinkles or no problems on our end in moving things along. So, want to go into budgets?
Sure, yeah.
Pat?
Kyle just referred to the 90% documents. On the desk here, I just brought a copy. There are two books, like you see up on top, and then the plan is down below it. And we've done the same thing we did with the 60. We've gone through every sheet, every one of those items, and they'll show up later on when we do our plan review, which I passed out along with some of the value engineering suggestions. Everybody should have a copy of what I handed out for the purposes of staying on target and just walk through it. There's a summary sheet showing the cost of Georgetown. And it's all good news, which is why I'm starting with the good news, and we'll work backwards from there. And it also has
We should just say downward from
it
there.
al- it also has an attached a comparison of the RLP estimate, which is used in preparing the 3011. You also should have a copy of the RLB summary and a copy of the AM Fogarty summary. When I sent those out to Ellie, I sent the full estimates out. The RLB was about 50-some odd pages, and Fogarty was 91 pages. The intent was really to distribute the summary, because the full estimate's pretty involved to go through. And then you'll also have, there are 10 or 12 pages or so of the review comments that we've given to DRA, which we continue to talk to them about with some of those issues. Going to the first sheet, if everybody has that first.
These are for giving them information so they tighten up their drawings. In other
This
words,
is,
things
it,
like
yeah,
that.
it's,
Okay.
there's suggestions on cuts, and also MSBA requires that there's a column to the right that says comments. MSBA requires that they respond to the comments, and we'll be submitting this, and they'll be furnishing comments, and we'll submit it with the 90% set.
Yes, George.
You know, one of the things I've been seeing, I haven't seen in the cost estimates, and I'm not sure if it's in there as part of the domestic water system, but at the utilities subcommittee meeting, Mike Anderson, different members of the committee discussed having possibility of a water filtration system that would filter the water, because for two reasons. One is that we're gonna encourage the dispensers to use our own
Yeah.
town water
Yeah.
rather than bottled water. The other one is that with the iron and manganese in our water system,
Yeah.
felt the appliances would last longer, require less maintenance.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not really seeing it in the breakdown.
There's a full estimate right here, an RLB estimate. If you want, we can take the time to sift through it, if that's, we can do
I
that.
believe we have it, George. but-
You do?
Yeah,
I
I think
believe
it's,
we
I think
can
it's in
under-
there, yeah.
I'll look if you keep going.
All right, I was just gonna say that. Why don't we move
Okay.
on? And it's so noted that you wanna find out if it's there, and we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So that first sheet that has the, this is a simplified sheet of what, and now, if anybody wants a copy, this is the
No,
MSBA
you're
3011,
gonna say that's a
which
water
we fill in and it
quality.
automatically
That's
regurgitates everything and
stormwater.
spits the information
Could
out.
be under plumbing.
And I just want to make clear, this is a snapshot in time. When the final bids come in, they'll all go into MSBA, and that MSBA will do this officially. You know, we're filling in the form to like, give us an idea of where we are. And right now, the information is quite good. If you flip over to the comparison spreadsheet, if you go over to the first column that says project funding agreement, that is the arrangement and the contract that we have currently with MSBA. And the total additional construction cost was $36,979. If you go to the right, the design development, that came in at very close to that price at $36,973. To the right of that was the 60%, which is a couple of months ago, which was the $36,698. And then you go to the 90%, and now the good news is that we're at $35,344. The two previous estimates, again, as the drawings are progressing, some of the items that are carried as escalation cost and design contingencies, those tend to be absorbed as you go forward, because the design is being advanced, so they occur above the line, above the cost line, as opposed to down below the line. So when you stir everything into the equation, what you have now is a construction cost, if you look at the 90% on the front sheet, of $35,344. And then the budget without the contingencies at $42,246. Contingencies were $2,189, for a total project budget of $44,436, as opposed to what MSBA originally approved at the $46,169. And the maximum facilities grant, again, everything gets adjusted, all sides of the equation get adjusted. And then the Georgetown share, you can see, went from 24,700 to 23,287 in this calculation, or actually about $1.5 million. If you were to use the contingency money, then of course, and it was reimbursable, it would go up, but we said before that your contingency dollars will never be fully reimbursed. There'll always be something in there that's gonna be exceeding a cap or something, but again, like I said, the good news is that we're down considerably, to the extent that Chuck and I spent a couple hours yesterday afternoon double-checking it, and we both took it home last night to make sure that everything was plugged in right. And for anybody who's interested, you know, this is the actual 3-page arrangement that is somewhat mystifying, because when you plug all the numbers in off the estimate, it automatically spits out exactly what's ineligible, what's eligible, and it comes up with the computations at the very bottom. These numbers show up here. This is a much simplified form to what shows up in this fairly involved formula. But if anybody wants a full copy of it, I'd be happy to hand it out, and if you need explanation, we'll be happy to go through it with it.
So just for people who may be watching at home, am I reading this correctly, that to the town, not the total project cost, but to the town, from what was MSBA approved, at this stage of 90% estimate, you're
Right.
approximately 1.5 million under that?
Correct, that's correct.
And
correct.
I'm assuming this is not typical, because I was speaking to Pat yesterday or the day before. He was telling me he'd be sending everything. It must have been yesterday. Because he said, I'm on my way home to do the numbers again. He says,
For the fourth time, yes, that's right.
because it just
Yeah.
is just unbelievable.
As many times as we've done it, it's always interesting because the anomaly of when you move some of the categories that appear in the, below the cost line, the design contingency and the escalations, when you start to take those and move them above the line, or in this particular case, they more or less vanished, it changes all the relationships. And the relationships are all based on formulas. I mean, the actual hard cost of the job is based on a formula which can't exceed a certain square foot cost. Then you take a portion of that, which is applicable to the site cost. It's fairly involved. Suffice to say that we did it a number of times to make sure that at this particular snapshot in time, and bear in mind, this is a snapshot in time, we basically won't know what the final numbers are until we receive all the bids, get all the breakdowns, and then MSBA will plug everything in as we've done and come out with the final rendition. But as far as the items and the caps and everything else, you know, we're comfortable that what we've done and what we've seen so far, backed up by our estimate. I mean, we're compelled to use the architect's estimate. His estimate's about $230,000 more than our estimated was. And they were actually a little further apart. There's been an ongoing discussion for the last week and a half in meetings at DRA's office to reconcile. And what I mean by reconcile, every one of the estimators takes things off in a different fashion. They'll have things accumulated in one area, and you gotta go back and make sure you pull it apart and make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. And while you're doing all of that, we are also spending eons of time going through all of this and preparing our comments that we sent to MSBA along with the architect to obviously get their responses and their comments. And so again, like I said, there's been a tremendous amount of time, and we're always pleased when we can sit down with a client and say that the team has actually worked real well and the things are moving in a very positive direction. We're not there until we get the final numbers in, but for this particular snapshot in time, we're pleasantly surprised, as about pleasantly surprised as we could be at this particular stage on this side of the project.
So,
It's really good news.
That's great.
so we still have $174,000 in the contingency, design and pricing contingency.
That's correct.
And you think that's enough to cover us based on the fact that this is 90%?
We're gonna be, I mean, this 90% is probably closer to 95. I mean, we're getting close to moving it, you know, to, we're actually pre-qualifying. We're, you know, right now we've advertised, we're gonna be out to bid by the 8th of August, with bids due, like I said, I think it's early October sometime. So we're right on top of the schedule we originally laid out, and, you know, we're feeling relatively comfortable with the budgets. And we've monitored a couple of projects that have come in this particular size range, and they both come in and they've both been a little bit under the budgets. So we're, at this stage of the game, we're about as comfortable as you can be. We're still vigilant, we're still combing through things and obviously working with DRA and reviewing the documents, but we think that we're in pretty good shape.
So as I see it, most of the numbers of the total cost now for the 90% are above what the original costs were, but that's to be expected
Right.
because you use your contingency to pay for that.
That's right.
And basically, our contingency went down. Excuse me, I have sinus allergies. So I sound terrible, but I feel fine.
You look great.
Thank you.
You
You don't have to. You don't have to.
yeah,
I'm not contagious.
All right, good.
So, I want to say that. But so we've reduced our contingency down $3 million. So basically, we've dispersed $1.5 million, and we're saving $1.5 million
That's
out
right.
of that. So
That's
the
correct.
contingency is the thing that was
Yeah.
higher than what was assumed all the way through pricing and everything
We
too.
didn't
So
do last
Yeah.
night when we were looking for the right
Interesting.
information. We should have called.
Yeah. Because that's what happens. You can't do a side-by-side comparison. You really have to be able to realize you're pulling a lot of those costs up above.
Right.
And they're disappearing because they're being absorbed in the rest of the estimates. So yeah.
All right,
You
Well-
pointed that out very well. Thank you.
that's great news.
That is very good news.
Almost afraid to ask, but how does the 1.5 that we're less than at this point in time take into account any issues that may or may not come up with Conservation Commission, those outstanding site issues?
Well, again, like I said, those will have to be touched based on the Concom situation. I'm not aware of any major items with the Concom. I mean, I think the drawings are pretty well set. I know there was a few revisions with the wetland lines and so forth, but again, in talking to Kyle and who talked to the wetland people, we actually have accommodated in this particular estimate. There's one area where we can't do a normal angle of repose, we can't do a regular slope, so we've actually built in a retaining wall, an earth-fill type retaining wall against one of the areas. That's included. So that discussion has been going on, assuming that that would be a modification that will be obviously delivered to the Concom. So we think that, you know, to the extent that possible, we think that we're pretty well covered.
And
with
as
it, yeah.
Jeff pointed out, there's still 174,000 of design contingency too, for things that aren't quite in the documents yet either.
So, I'll start this by saying I'm not one to want to ever add cost to a project. If I stop there, I'll get elected as whatever I want.
Is there a big
right?
buck coming after that, or what?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
But as we went through this process, we were very conscious, and it looks like we all did a great job on controlling costs, making decisions that would bring down the cost through whatever we did, you know, whether it's the finishes inside, whether it's the outside, whether it's the site, whatever it is. So now my question is, before we go out to bid, I think we should go back and take a look at things to make sure that we're
going
not
to do
being
that.
penny wise and pound foolish on some of these things, because we made some hard decisions that in the long term may not have been the best solution or the best direction, but it was based on trying to bring the cost down. Again, I'm not trying to raise the cost, but I'm trying to say that if we put in a product that's going to wear out in 5 years, and we could have put in a product that's going to last for 15 years and only be, you know, a quarter more, I think we should reconsider some of those things.
Well, first of all,
and
we'd
think about it.
be in violation because we've got to do a 50-year school. So if we did
Well,
that.
still, but you know what I mean.
But,
no,
I'm-
but there are finishes in here that you know, aren't going to last necessarily 50 years, or items that may not be the right decision in a long-term sense. So I just want to make sure, if we're going to put this much money into this school, I want to give the town the best one we can for the price, and we've already told them and they've approved a certain amount. And again, I do want to reduce it, but I want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I think we should all really consider that, honestly, consider it.
And we'll be discussing the value engineering things, because I think that's gonna.
Well, this is almost
encompass all of what you're saying.
this in a way is I mean, value engineering in the profession means figuring out ways to reduce the cost in a good way. So this is not only value engineering, which we should always be doing, but it's also valuing decisions that will maybe even increase the cost, which value engineering
Yeah.
typically does not.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that.
And there are a number of site issues still outstanding.
Okay, so that's, I think that those decisions need to be made. The other thing before I forget, because I always do forget things, I know that in the design of the exterior of the building, we still had some outstanding items that we're gonna go over, so we definitely need to go through that before this becomes 100% done. So, you know, the front area and stuff like that, so I just wanna finalize those things. And I don't believe
We're gonna
there's
have another-
anything inside, but
We're gonna have another meeting,
we need to have follow-up meetings on that.
yeah. All right,
The
is
la-
there,
The last thing I was just gonna cover is attached, the last item I had was the plan and spec review that's attached. Originally, I had a number, the previous ones had a number of X's under the VE category, not knowing where we were gonna be. I've removed a substantial number of those, understanding that we now can be maybe considering doing something else. Although, quite frankly, the building is a very well-designed, very durable building, so nothing comes to mind that would tell me we want to go in. But MSBA requires that we do point out, in case we do run into any trouble anywhere along the line, that we do point out areas where you could actually potentially save some dollars. As I mentioned the other day, to us, you know, there's three elements of value engineering. Value engineering is, again, like I said, something that you shouldn't ever notice. It's a matter of doing a different structural detail. It's a way of bracing something instead of a moment connection. It's a way of doing things without sacrificing any finishes. I mean, changing, you know, you know, terrazzo tile to VCT. That's not value engineering, that's cheapening the product. So again, like I said, along those lines, there are areas where we point out that something could be done more economically. So all the way through this whole project, that is probably half items of value engineering and half items of things that we need to talk to DRA about that we feel should be looked at. So, again, like I said, that's all part of it. The other part is obviously looking at things that, should we run into a budget problem, at this stage, we want to be able to take a look at it with the committee and say, where can we actually save some dollars? Fortunately, we're in a point where we don't have to do that, but we still want to make sure that we take a look at it. And also point out areas where you may want to revisit some of these issues and obviously maybe add a few dollars in, because we seem to be in pretty good shape. You can even do them as an alternate. We want to still maintain that safety. A lot of these items also in here are things that have to be checked out with the town. As an example, the front end of the spec, I spoke to Mike, that front end of the spec has gone to Copeland and Page. It's very important that they look at the front end of the spec. There's a whole insurance section. Mike has sent that insurance section off to your insurance agent, whoever does the insurance for the town. So he's going to be furnishing information on that. So this is a list of all of the items that we feel should be addressed both by the town, by legal, by insurance, by DRA, and that MSBA is going to want to take a look at to make sure we've covered all of the bases that humanly possible to cover. And if anybody has any questions on any of this, or anybody wants a 3011, just let me know.
Copy of the spec checklist, 90% spec review.
Did I
Yeah,
email
sure.
that out?
Yeah.
Well, you probably did,
Here's a
and
whole
I
packet,
don't
yeah.
have it.
Yeah, here's a whole packet. Yeah.
So my suggestion is,
That's a copy of
use
everything.
this
The
list
last one is the,
and take the time to go
Plan and
through it,
spec, yeah.
so that if you have any questions at the next meeting, we can address them. I mean, for us to sit through and go through each one right now, it would just take forever.
Could I make a suggestion that we set up some, again, one more round of those side meetings that we had? One for
We're going
exterior,
to.
one for interior, one for site?
Yes, we're going to,
Okay.
yeah. All
And then
right?
we can report back to the overall committee with that breakdown.
Okay. Anything else?
that's it, unless somebody has a question, I'm all set.
I have a quick question. Being the newbie on the team here, the VE items are meaning what?
Value engineering.
Value engineering, yeah,
Okay.
and the previous version looked like this. There's a lot more X's on it, because,
Yep.
again, we didn't know where we were gonna be. So,
So
again.
these are question marks? The X's are question marks or
No, those are
consideration?
just items for DRA to take a look at, so that they could comment on it, which they've started doing already. Kyle handed me tonight some comments that they made already. MSBA is gonna be, gonna require that.
But they
all
generally
those
mean,
items-
too, that value engineering is items to consider for possible reductions in scope or substitutions of materials.
Okay.
To bring down the cost.
Okay,
That was the original intent.
Gotcha.
Or in some cases require additional justification or, cost analysis, something like that, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Is on that list, like paper dispensers for the bathrooms? Because the town, I believe, I'm
Has
pretty
their
sure
own
the
program,
school.
right?
Yeah, they get their own for free.
If you look at that list, one of the categories is to double check with the town to see if they supply their own toilet
But
accessories.
right now, we have just installation of owner-supplied paper dispensers.
But that's not
actually,
PWP, you'll find that on the list.
in the boys and girls rooms, the multiple fixture rooms,
We
the
have
gang
hand dryers.
fixtures,
We have
we have
hands.
electric hand dryers.
Right.
There.
I didn't set Peter up to say that either, that's on the list, yeah.
That was on the notes you gave me.
These are basically-
You want to tax to the $5 bill?
Yes, that's, we just
Oh,
have to,
that's
we have
it.
to just vote to approve that. So you can move on to that.
I am gonna go into this.
What I thought was an invoice, but
Yeah.
to approve it.
All right, so we need to take a vote this evening to approve these, it's called PS7, these professional services. It has to do with the asbestos, I mean, they have
Additional-
to analyze.
Removal.
Removal.
Destructive testing to,
Behind the brick was
yeah,
one of them.
both behind the brick, under the foundation, below grade. Oftentimes in this vintage building, we discover there's mastic, waterproofing mastic that has asbestos. So there was, some investigation was done earlier, at the very beginning of the schematic design, and we've been using that scope throughout here. But as we get closer now, the project's real, and we know the building's gonna come down at some point. We actually, our consultant recommends going in, taking out some bricks, opening up some walls in a couple key places, so that there are no surprises during the demolition. So for that investigation, there's a bit of a additional service for them to go back and do that.
Okay, so the amount is $1,530.
Have you asked the original builder if there's anything like that?
We did. We interrogated him thoroughly.
But actually, more importantly, he could have asked himself because they designed it. You see,
We looked
we
in
just
the
built it,
mirror.
but he had to go back in and look at his own records, see what they designed, you know?
Right.
But the regulations, seriously, back then, the regulations on hazmat was totally different. There was no MDS data sheets and everything else, so.
They're
All
looking
right.
for Hoffer in Minneapolis, so.
It's
Yeah.
$1,530.
Question, don't you need the design fees approved at this time as well? For them to finish the design part?
That was
That's part of
approved
our-
previously
Yeah.
as one of the earlier ones,
Yeah.
I believe, Chuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just checking.
Yeah.
All right, so I
I
need
just-
a motion.
I just have a question, actually, well, you can make a motion, go ahead.
A motion to approve payment of this PPS number 7 for $1,530.
It's not,
So-
yeah, it's just approval of,
It's approved the
to
work.
proceed with
To
the
proceed,
additional
Yeah,
okay.
service.
proceed.
There's no bill yet.
All right, it's just the fee is going to be included with everything. So, would anyone care to make a motion to approve proceeding with these?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, any discussion?
All right, so does this end up getting included in your invoice, or is this a separate invoice that we get?
It's at the bottom of our invoice. It's
It'll be a line
it's
item.
Okay, so but
itemized
it's
separate, so
included
it's
in your
billed
fee.
against PSS 7. It's not part of basic services.
It's
But
not.
next month's invoice, it'll show up.
Okay, so, and how much money do we have left over
A lot.
for the, we do, okay.
I reviewed
Where-
this
where-
report.
Boy, that's pretty.
All right. No, I know you do,
Pretty
I know you do,
informative.
but I know we've approved a lot of these.
I'll put it straight,
Is it on
we're
here?
under where we budgeted.
Okay.
For this service.
Okay,
All right.
okay, all right. Okay,
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now, do you need all 3 signed by someone?
We just need one back for us.
What was it, Dave Service?
I think Mike has signed them in the past, but I'm
Okay.
not sure.
He's not here.
here, I mean, Stu will sign it.
Oh, okay, there you go. He just needs one signed.
Just who's signing this?
All right.
Plus me.
Carl, would you like to
Dave.
discuss the Conservation
Right
Commission
here.
hearing?
We would. It's scheduled for June 27th now. I don't know if you all got that notice that the originally scheduled meeting was June 20th, this week, this Thursday, but they knew in advance they weren't going to have a quorum, I guess, and so they pushed the meeting off to the 27th. So we're on board for that. Things have been happening there at Conservation Commission. You know, they do have a peer reviewer. Our consultant has gotten a copy of the peer review comments that have come from that consultant, and they've prepared responses. Literally, I think they're going in today or tomorrow back, the responses going back to Conservation, so they can share them with the peer reviewer prior to the 27th. To make the meeting go that much smoother and have a lot of questions answered in advance. Some of their comments will result in some changes in how calculations are done. Some of these things, as I understand it, is somewhat of an art and not a science as to how you calculate runoff. You know, you have to classify, you know, grass is one kind of runoff, you know, pavement is another kind, but what if you've got mulch, or what if you got some different kind? You know, there's a little bit of interpolation needed in certain areas, and when you spread it over a big area, like, you know, a forest, it makes a significant difference. So there were some different interpretations, as I understand it, on what factors to use in calculating runoff, and so they are redoing those calculations. Yes, sir.
Yeah, are the calculations going up, or are they going down?
Going up, being more conservative, I guess.
Right, the
Is-
bigger
Is that
structures.
the,
So they,
More runoff.
more runoff?
so are we gonna have to
We've
count
included
for
that.
Right.
We've included that already in our latest cost estimate, that some of those subsurface drainage
Do we have to-
structures have to get a little bit larger. Yeah.
Does that take into account the emergency drive if it ends up being paved versus?
Yeah, right now it does, because that's how it was submitted. We're actually gonna talk about that in a second though, Rob, as another issue. That wasn't raised by the peer reviewer, but the peer reviewers, primarily the comments, as I recall, I saw a copy of them, were mainly about the runoff calculations there, and so they're being responded to. But the other thing is noted in the subheading here in your minutes, revised wetland delineation. I want to spend a moment on that because this is also a result of their peer reviewer. They had another wetland scientist look at our wetland scientist line as to, you know, where these wetland lines were. And what they came up with, I'll show you an enlargement in a second, but I want to, on the big plan. Originally, this is not the town's property, but off of the town's property, there was a wetland that did this, like that. Their wetland scientists came along and moved these flags a few more feet towards our property. And when you draw the arc of buffer zone, it actually now extends into our area of development here. And I'll show you the enlargement. The other thing that they discovered was, again, off of the town's property, but down here, about right there, there's an area literally about that big. It's about the size of this room.
A little less.
Out in the field. It is also considered, like this one, sort of an isolated wetland. And it falls into a category that by state definition would be disqualified because it's so small and it's not hydrologically connected to anything. But Georgetown's bylaw is stricter, and it allows this to be considered a protected resource. So again, you have to draw lines around that little wetland there too. And when you do that, let me show you what that results in. Here's the one that I just drew, that isolated wetland at a much larger scale. Here's that secondary access drive. Here's the driveway going around the school. So it's right here. See the driveway going around and this secondary access. So that is right there. You know, it's that big, right there. So when you draw the buffer around it, it overlaps two areas. One, it overlaps a small portion of the secondary access drive here, and it overlaps a small portion of the driveway right here. This is the driveway. And in Georgetown's bylaw, again, within that 75-foot distance, you're not supposed to have any new impervious material in a driveway or roadway would classify as that. So, and that's this area, and let me show you the other area.
Unless you mitigate it.
Exactly. Or get some relief.
Carl, before you flip that page over, just only because you're on that page right now, so the emergency drive has a reverse curve in it at the end, and if that gets straightened out for an emergency vehicle, so it doesn't have to do that little whoop-de-doo there, I don't know if that's something you want to look at now, because the setbacks may or may not get impacted.
Yeah, the overlap is right here,
Yeah. Yeah.
The overlap is right there.
So you're saying straighten out the curve a little bit?
You mean this?
Yeah, I'm just saying if that has any impact on the grading or not, I don't know. Just
okay. And the other one too. Here's the issue with moving those flags a little bit. Again, we're talking about this area here. So this is it's almost right adjacent to where the teacher's parking lot is now, where the new driveway sort of continues on into the site. That wetland line used to be, you can see it right here underneath, used to be right there. It's now moved out to there, a distance of maybe, 15 feet. But that 15 feet now means that there's about 5 feet of overlap onto our new roadway right at that point. And also, there's a question, was originally scheduled to be riprap, which is stone piled up. In this case, it's not. In some cases, riprap is just dumped literally out of a dump truck, and it finds a natural angle of repose to prevent erosion, to stabilize the slope. This is actually placed riprap. You sort of have to build it up almost like a stone wall. There's a question as to whether they would consider that impervious or not in there as well.
But just when I mentioned that we carried a wall, not knowing what the Conservation Commission will do, what we did in our estimate is we carried an earth-supported retaining wall there in case we can't live with the slope. just to be safe, just to
Right.
carry something,
So,
you know, so we
in lieu
wanted
of
to start
this-
to make
in lieu of
arrangements to
this
carry some of
riprap,
those costs.
It's the next one.
We have, oh, do we have the wall drawn? I'm sorry, I don't have to draw it by hand then for you. There we are.
It's a little different
In
orientation.
terms of different orientation. But you can see this was all the contours that used to come through here. In lieu of that, there's a wall.
Yeah.
You know, it starts off at 0 height, goes up to about 12 feet high, down to there, and back down to 0 to support that road. But there's still a little portion of the road that's in that 75-foot buffer there.
Carl, in their process, so they have a second wetland scientist come in and flag it, and
Yes.
there's a discrepancy between the two flaggings. Is that it? Is that the end of the process?
No.
Well, our wetland scientist didn't push back. She looked at it, she
Yeah.
talked with her, the peer reviewer, and said, okay, I can see where you might think this, I thought this, but she didn't push back. Just to be, you know, polite about it, I guess, is the way to put it. So, the strategy now then, in these two things, is to ask for relief and to propose some mitigation, to sort of allow these things to continue here.
I hate to do this. Why not push back? And I know why she didn't, was to
It sort of puts it in another arena, I guess. If we can agree on the mitigation and take steps to avoid, you know, like the wall, to eliminate the riprap there, which, you know, we've included in our cost estimate.
Yeah.
It's slightly more expensive than the riprap. It may be the more,
expedite
yeah, expedited.
Is there a
good
timing
word.
issue with that? Because, I mean, because
Yeah.
a lot of times, you know, you get two opinions, and then they go into a room, they come out polite, and then they determine where it is.
Yeah.
So, wouldn't we take that as a first approach to let them just go back to each other and go out there and just say, listen, you know, that's not this, this is here, that's why it was over here, and they'll say, and then they'll come to an agreement. So then we know where we're starting from.
Well, if
Yeah.
it was a regular, it wasn't town, if it was a regular applicant, the next step would be a DEP administrative appeal.
Oh, is that the next?
Yeah, so we don't wanna do that.
And also, our wetland scientist is familiar with Georgetown. And so I think she understands the commission and feels it's the way to go
Best way
too.
to do
Yeah. Because again, as George says, the commission, you know, rightfully needs to think about setting precedents for when outside developers come in. You know, someone other than the town wanting to build a building for itself. You know, Walmart, that's always the example people use. You know, Walmart wants to come in and pave the forest, and, you know, you want to be able to hold their feet to the fire the same way you held your own project, you know, to the same sort of standards. So they want to be careful in that regard too. You can understand that.
But I still think that, I mean, I understand that part, and I agree, and I don't think we want to do anything to break the rules, but I think that first questioning, because they each have professional opinions on it, and they should be talking to each other as peers to really determine where that is and see what happens. Because if it gets pushed back, you know, if it's been pushed up 15 feet, all of a sudden it goes back 10 feet, then
Yeah.
you might not have to
That goes
worry
away.
about the road.
That's right.
But then we have to worry about the retaining
Well,
wall, so.
I think it's a good point, Jeff, that we'll clarify with her
Yeah.
what sort of back and forth they had, because, yes, in essence, we're asking for relief here. It's the same as if we're asking for them to move the flags back 5 feet, effectively.
Exactly.
So,
That's
there.
what I'm,
And likewise here, the one thing that we may want to offer here, we don't necessarily want to realign this road because we're actually pinched between these two isolated wetlands now. And if we go in that direction, we'll be impacting this one unnecessarily, you know. And so, again, we're asking for relief here for that little bit of overlap. But one other thing that sort of gets into the discussion then of the access drive is that I think after our discussion here, our discussion with our own consultants internally and our sort of, we haven't had real discussion, but feedback from Conservation Commission is, we think the way to go with this access drive now is not to pave it, is to make it a gravel road. The
Stone
best
dust?
example, make it a Vermont country road, as narrow as we can make it to still be effective, whatever that is, 12 feet wide, maybe, Peter, for a vehicle. So it's still drivable for virtually everyone. It's still plowable if you want. And again, that's an operational question, but they plow roads in Vermont. You do have maintenance. You know, if you happen to plow it and you scrape some of it away, you gotta repair it. Or if you develop potholes, you know, that's the other thing that happens with those roads. You know, one little low spot suddenly grows a little bit because it collects water, and, you know, you have to fill those every spring or things like that. But it's certainly feasible. And it then provides some mitigation for this. Say, okay, we'll take away the pavement that's overlapping in that zone, as well as the issues of drainage that are caused by having even the small amount of pavement that we proposed here, because there was no mitigation at the bottom of this. I mean, we were counting on the swales on the sides for the most part to pick that up. But there still may be some who would question, you know, this is downhill, and at the very bottom here, we're introducing, you know, the possibility of more water going in that direction there. So it would take away that. It would be still walkable, still bikeable. Here's some, you know, photographs of these kinds of roads. And they're not dusty or, you know, muddy necessarily. They might be the day of a storm, like today, might be a little bit muddy, but they drain. They can have a crown that the water still goes off to the sides in that regard.
If there's something additional, could we also ask maybe like to increase storage, maybe replicate?
That might be another option. You know, in essence, it's as if you were filling the wetland and replicating it elsewhere, because that would be the other thing. I mean, if we were to just, it's not our property, but we could avoid this by filling this little point that's sticking out there and replicating it somewhere else. So maybe they would propose that, but again, as I understand it, there's sort of already discussions going on between at least the conservation agent and our consultant as to what possible mitigations the commission might entertain. And the ones that we've heard about to date are actually sort of unrelated directly to wetlands. They're things like student gardens, providing student gardens here and making the nature trails and contact with conservation and wetlands part of the school curriculum. Things we were already frankly thinking of, obviously, which would be great. We'd welcome those sorts of mitigation items. Another was, which was kind of creative, is there's going to be a lot of clearing here, and I guess they appreciated that when they did their site walk with us. They said, what if you meaning I guess the building committee, were to allow the community to come in here before the contractor takes the site and allow individuals to remove plants in the area to be cleared? We said, sure, why not?
I think that's a great idea,
free,
just in
doesn't
general.
cost anything, you know?
I think that's a great
Is there any
idea.
liability issue?
It would be the town's
There would
property
be.
still.
There would be,
You
yeah.
know?
You'd have to have some
Yeah.
guidelines.
There would likely be a liability issue.
Yeah.
Said
might
that
get the
with
whole
a
thing cleared
knowing.
for
Dragging
free.
down Main Street, 50-foot trees.
You know, you could put restriction on it, no
Save a lot of
mechanical
money on
means.
site
See a lot of Christmas trees go down on hoods.
By hand or,
No
you know.
chainsaws.
So, exactly, no power equipment.
No, that's
only-
my tree. No,
I
that's
think
my
it's a
tree.
great idea.
Paul Bunyan
personally.
style
So
only.
something like that. So they are talking about mitigation. And like I said, we're willing to offer that retaining wall in lieu of the riprap as another way to minimize the imposition on that buffer zone there.
You have
So,
not to get down to the nitty gritty, but if you have that retaining wall, then you're gonna have to have a rail also.
yes,
There will
yes.
be a fence
We
on
had a
it.
guardrail anyways.
Okay.
We'll be adding
A fence to it.
a guardrail for the cars. Now we'd be adding a fence too for pedestrians, yeah.
And then,
Even though there's no sidewalk there, just
Yeah.
for added security, because it is a tall drop, right? So that's the status of things. One of the things we mentioned is, we're trying to line up as much as we can beforehand, so we go into the hearing with, you know, as many questions responded to already. But it's very likely, and that the hearing's not gonna be closed on the 27th, that they'll require another meeting to actually work things out and be ready to propose an order of conditions. And anticipating that, I'm not exactly sure where it stands, but we are looking to try to get the commission to schedule a meeting in 2 weeks as opposed to waiting a whole nother month.
On the 11th.
Because I think we would be ready, our consultants would be ready in 2 weeks to respond to any issues that came up, and hopefully we could keep the project moving that way.
Yeah, are there any plans that show the stormwater drainage coming out into Elm Street?
I just wanted to mention that too, George. That's the other big thing.
I'm still not seeing it.
That's a perfect lead-in to the other part of this.
So before we go to
Yep.
Elm Street, you're talking about up the main inter?
Yes.
Before we go there, before we leave this,
Yep.
Concom, yeah. Couple of things. One, the 3 large trees that are
Down here?
is 5-foot diameter,
Yes, yeah.
That's a low point opposite, and when you're doing the grading, can you just take a look? You might be able to do that by filling and not cutting, because
Oh, yeah. Well, we're gonna be excavating to get a water line in, remember?
but
When we
every-
restore it.
Yeah, and even with the water line, if you were gonna come in with a gravel drive, you gotta come down. Instead of coming down, you go up.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And the other was that, so on these roads, the gravel roads in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, whatnot, if they're public roads, obviously, this isn't gonna get that kind of use.
Right.
And that's a big part of the maintenance issue. But they would be plowed, and in order to maintain these roads, the equipment is really big stuff. It has to, by definition.
Is it compacted?
The
Well, they
layered
use-
graders.
Oh,
Yeah.
the width of it?
Well, they
Or
use
the-
they
They use a
these-
grader.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
use a grader, and,
Yeah.
and it's just a big piece of equipment. And I guess a question that comes up for me is that, over time, if the town is really capable of taking care of the road, because I don't think you can just go in and be patching these holes as they start to develop. So it's a question, I think.
Yeah, the sort of ironic thing here is that if there's not much traffic on here, which there shouldn't be, right? If it's secondary access only,
Not gonna get as much
then you're not
wear.
gonna get much wear, you won't have to maintain it. I think the biggest maintenance you're gonna have is to clear down branches and leaves to keep it passable, because it's not regularly traveled on. It's not gonna be vehicles traveling on it.
Right.
Want to get grown over a bit with weeds and
Just-
It shouldn't,
yeah.
again, because of the subgrade and all, you shouldn't have too many weeds, just taking root.
I guess I'm just thinking of where there's some pretty steep gradients in there, and these pictures are all pretty nice flat pictures.
We have a few of
Some
the
steep
actual
ones.
roadway
Okay.
too, if you wanna look.
I think it's 20
But
feet
where
over
it's-
500 feet.
Well, you have some 10% grades in there, I think, and they're pretty steep, and
There's a spot, yeah.
yeah, and
Here
so
and right there.
with the way the weather is going and the way it's changing and the amount of rain that we're getting, and I suspect we're gonna be getting more rain as the years go by, and the snow that we get, things are gonna get more and more dramatic, and I think I still have a maintenance question about it.
It
You have
definitely
10%
is sort of
still?
a work in progress here, because,
Yeah, I
Very
understand.
minimal
Um,
zones.
but I think, frankly, after batting it back and forth, that's what we'd like to propose and recommend for this. And still, obviously, to the best extent possible, satisfy the need for secondary access to the site.
George?
George brings up a very good point here, and it's crucial, and I should have mentioned it in passing here too. The other part of our approach with the Conservation Commission, because this was one of their comments, was how is this drainage being handled and how is it connected, the outfall of it. Right now, on the plans, it shows a pipe connecting to a wetland, which it's actually down the street here. Right about here, there's a culvert under Elm Street that picks up water coming down the hill this way under Elm Street, connects hydrologically to a wetland that's here, but it's private property there. Obviously the roadway is public, but what we'd be dumping into is private there. And our engineer feels like at this time, the best strategy is still to put in the drainage here in the roadway, but to tie it into whatever is gonna happen in Elm Street. And to separate out the approval process of that till that time. And propose to the Conservation Commission literally that we would build these catch basins and these drainage, but cover them over at this time. so that no water is going into them. And in essence, the drainage off this driveway, for their review purposes, is unchanged from what it is today. And in the intervening time, hopefully, who knows, 6 months, a year, but certainly before the project is finished and constructed, because remember, this is one of the last pieces to be done, 2015, we'll know what's going on in Elm Street, and we'll know engineering-wise what we can tie into. And that'll make their review process a lot more reasonable, and it won't delay the approval of the rest of the project. That's what we were worried about. Just as George said, they're saying, we're not sure what's happening here, so we can't give you an approval on this project yet till we know what's happening there. And we're sort of saying, we don't know what's happening there either, frankly, because really it should tie into drainage that goes into Elm Street.
Should that be part of the Elm Street project, though?
The connection should.
No,
But,
even the drainage.
well, we think it makes sense to put this in now, because the contractor who's gonna be tearing up this road coming in and out of the site is gonna be responsible for repaving it. We ought to
We're
put
gonna be tearing it up for the gas
the
service,
drainage
and,
in.
so you might as well,
We got other
put
work
everything
going
the
in
ground.
there, gas line, well.
Are you
it's
narrowing
gas line,
that, that road?
And we were back here, but not here.
Yeah, water's coming.
Yeah.
Good.
So we think that's a way to approach it, is to put the structures in, just cover them over for now, so the drainage pattern remains the same from an engineering point of view. Not that we're proposing to leave it that way forever, obviously, but it would allow the Conservation Commission to approve this independent of that, we hope. Again, that's the strategy that we'd like to propose to them.
So Peter, what do you think?
Are you gonna have a trunk line, or is it gonna go catch basin to catch basin?
No, there's a trunk line down the middle of the road with these Ys that come into it from catch basins. I don't know if we have a set of plans you could.
No, I.
take
Yeah,
a
we're
quick
just,
look
we're just
at.
coming into the main line.
They're sort of paired catch basins on
Yeah,
either
because
side.
when I looked at the plan before, when you were
think there's
going
6
into
of them.
private property, I'm thinking, how are they gonna tie into this, because we don't have anything out there, and the best thing to do would be to tie into Elm Street,
Yes, yeah,
so.
Yeah, it sounds logical.
So it makes sense to you to do it that way?
yeah, we think so too.
Because the water's there now anyways.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
And we're not doing any construction other than revamping the road, so we're not. Okay. Well, that sounds
Okay.
very reasonable.
Okay.
All right. Would you like to
Yeah.
discuss the letter from the,
Yeah, did you circulate
I
that?
sent it to everybody,
everyone?
yes.
That was very good news.
That was really good news.
Af-
The letter from the building
After,
inspector.
after your building
I did send
inspector
it.
talked to town council, he sort of came around to say it is reasonable
Yeah, I did.
to proceed with the project basically as designed without zoning board review on the height issue or the number of stories. So he has that power to do that as a building inspector.
And he did his due diligence, which
Right,
we're
he's very,
very
he's very
appreciative of.
professional about it.
Yes.
And it's well documented now, so that's great.
And so now that brings us to the site plan for the parking.
And I'm assuming that that item there is the proposal that the committee requested to handle some of the planning board issues.
Right,
And-
with peer review.
Yeah, and we, you just, Mike left you a copy of a proposal which you've handed to us, which we'll take and review and talk to Mike about it. We, again, like I said, I'm not sure he has others or others coming in, so we want to make sure we keep, confidentiality to the proposal. So we have it, we'll review it, we'll talk to Mike in the morning, see if he's got anything else coming, and then he'll make a recommendation within the confines of the authorization you gave him to obviously move to get it done.
All right.
Okay, so we probably have to talk about this then again at our next meeting?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what authorization was given Mike
Do
to
we have-
get
we're
it
gonna have
done.
to
We
vote
gave him
on
the,
it, right?
no, we voted
To a
the
certain amount.
approval to let him
I think you did, yeah, I think you did.
extend the contract to.
Yeah, so I think if it's within the purview of that
Is it on the board?
authorization you gave him, he can probably move to.
Yes,
So he can just move ahead?
he can move ahead,
Okay.
correct. All right, the site plan review checklist. Do we have a copy of that, or is there anything we need to
That
go
was
over
the-
tonight, or?
You-
The
we have-
electronic,
It's the one we sent
What we
around,
sent to
right?
was sent
everybody.
around that
Right.
Rob had generated initially.
Yeah, I don't.
We had expanded to add columns so that we could respond. And this is one of the meetings that we proposed that we should have again in subcommittee form. And we proposed the date of July 2nd, which is a week
Tuesday,
before your
July
next
2nd.
meeting of July 9th.
Rob, we want to do it after we meet with the planning board
The
and consider the
conservation.
issues, I mean, the conservation board, Jeff.
Yeah.
July when?
Second.
Second, Tuesday. Maybe we could do exterior the same night as.
That
would- Right.
What day?
July 2nd.
Second, Tuesday.
We have interior to do too, I think, too.
We have,
Outstanding things.
we have, well, yeah, especially if we're looking at other options.
What's good by you? We try to do it as early as possible.
Tuesday looks good.
What day?
Like 6:30?
Tuesday, July 2nd.
Now you can read.
Oh, I'm not even here.
You could do it
I'm out of
earlier.
town.
Good.
Oh, we can do it earlier, sure.
Okay, well, you spearheaded the
Then do the,
exterior.
Yeah, I
and
know
then we
those
work.
guys.
up-
You got
yeah.
others?
that.
Five
I'm out of
o'clock?
work, I don't care.
Okay.
4.
4
Four
o'clock.
is even
So,
better.
okay,
Yeah,
the next
that's
meeting
sure.
is the 9th.
Because I'm thinking it's gonna take longer.
Do we do meeting for the second?
I don't think you,
We- we
I don't
have
think you
the
should
next
have told them that.
July 9th?
So, July 2nd, at 4 o'clock,
Yeah,
we're
we
gonna
need-
do
I
a
can't do that.
Find a meeting
subcommittee
place
for the
'cause
I'll work
site.
on
gonna
getting
be
a
You
meeting.
can't do, all right, then we'll
So
have to
you don't-
choose another.
Yeah, this might be it.
I'm open all next week.
Your
or-
office is
He
open,
doesn't
but
have to do site.
the school's probably closed.
No, that's what I said, if we have to, we'll do another night.
Site two, just
Yeah.
Rob and.
What about
For
conference room?
interior.
early?
Walk through?
It's gonna be, you guys might
Okay.
have hours.
And where are you doing that meeting?
Early, it says.
Then a walkthrough?
At Pearl?
I'm-
No, it's at,
It
no,
sounds
it's
like the
we'll-
candidates.
I'm available
addressing all
next
this.
week.
We'd
Oh,
like to do
yeah.
the meeting, all right.
The whole
We
site.
have, we have a little conflict in that Jeff cannot do the 2nd.
Not
Jeff,
here that week.
my question is,
This is site issues.
this is
yeah.
for site, did you also wanna
Yeah.
be part of that?
I thought you were trying to tie it.
We were, but.
That's
We
only
would
for
if
our
we
convenience.
could.
That was only
Get
for our
together on-
convenience.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
we
that's
would if we
different.
could,
Okay,
but
have a
we
different
wanna
desk.
accommodate you, so what works for you?
Well, I'm not gonna do the site, so,
not doing
and,
Right.
and for interior and exterior of the building itself, really, next week I could make available. Let's see, next, next Wednesday, but it can't be until like 7. Next Tuesday, we have a meeting anyways, right? No?
No.
Okay,
Not
so,
till
No.
the ninth.
so I have that one free,
You're not going to-
because I have it in my book already.
What's
So
that,
Tuesday.
25th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I could meet the 8th of July.
Yeah, we want to get,
Early,
8th might be a little
earlier
close to our
than that
meeting.
would be
So-
for documents.
Yeah, so what's a good day for you? Is it,
probably Tuesday the 25th then.
that sounds great.
It's the best day.
Yeah.
What time do you wanna meet?
Um, is 7 too late for you guys? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
that's 7.
That's okay.
Okay, 7 o'clock, great. Where are we meeting?
How about Pembroke
At
again?
Pearly?
I mean, at Pearly?
Pearly.
Carol's office, Carol?
At Pearly?
This would be the second thing I've written in my 2014 calendar. Again, I kept saying, why is it on Wednesday?
You need one of these.
Yeah, it's time, it's time.
I'm
to write that
resisting, I like to open it up and look and
I'm right
scribble.
there with you.
Thank you.
And in fact, I'm proud to show it.
down. See, if you worked for me, I would
Did you
take that
say
away
7
from you.
o'clock was?
Rob, what I did for
I'd have to
years
fight.
was, what I did for years was print it out. You know, I'd have it, I'd enter it and then print it out so I could
I
see
do
it
that.
So I
all
have
at
people that do
once.
that.
Yeah.
And I give them 2 months, then I take away that buck and like, get done.
Exactly.
All right, so we'll do the 25th at 7 o'clock, Pearly. Carol, would we be able to use your office again for the 2nd at 4 o'clock?
There you go.
Okay.
The site's on.
Who would be interested in attending? Do we need to post an agenda, or is this just gonna be wrap it up?
It's a subgroup.
This is
It's not
just
a
the
committee.
subgroup,
It's a
okay.
subgroup.
I just wanna make sure that we're just doing Rob, Jeff, me, okay.
Jeff is not going to site.
No, I know, no, for the
So-
separate meetings.
George, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
okay,
George, so
that's
three of
fine.
you.
Peter's going.
Okay.
You going to site? Okay, that's good.
All right, if anyone else is interested, tell me, and I'll post it so that you can feel free to attend. We don't want to exclude anyone. You don't need to do that, but feel free to go.
Did you get a copy of the full estimate?
All right.
This site plan review?
No, well, I
It's site
got the
plan
91 pager or the other 70-some odd
It'd
pages.
be a good idea.
We had
before
put
that
site
meeting just to
signage
review
on
it.
Elm
Okay.
Street
Give you
here
an idea of the
too.
materials that
Yes,
are-
we do
Have
need
it
to
on the
talk
budget.
about
Want to talk
that.
about it here?
Yeah.
Not in the subcommittee.
What's on the 25th?
Interior, exterior materials.
Stu, if you go there, we've got it posted.
Okay,
Right.
okay. And, all right, so while Carl still has the floor, we want to talk about signage.
Are you doing anything else?
Attached,
Entire.
Yeah.
we're going to come back to that. We're just going to do the sign really quick.
One of the design items that we hadn't really brought up earlier was, and it might have come up earlier at a site meeting, was that the current entrance to the site, to the school, is sort of poorly signed right now. There's a little sign right here that you can barely notice. It's kind of at an odd angle and relatively small on the driveway there. And
How much land do we own?
we don't own much. It's tight,
It's in,
unfortunately.
there's a plan view in here.
I don't think I've ever seen this.
There. But we have enough to do
A lot of
something.
people haven't.
I don't think I've seen this.
What we're proposing, I don't have the larger footprint. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, it's in the sheets.
Yeah, it's part of the package there. So here's the driveway, here's the property line. It's very close. You know, the property line does flare out at the end, kind of following the driveway, which is nice because then it gives us a little bit of land to work with right here to put a sign on, right there. So what we're proposing is what's called a monument sign. So it's ground mounted, and it's perpendicular to the road, to Elm Street, which, you know, is good for visibility as you're driving the road, and it's the common thing to do when you don't have much frontage. If you had a nice big frontage, you put a sign parallel to the road, but far enough back that, you know, one-sided, that cars could see from either direction. But when you have very limited property, you have to put a sign near the road. You want to put it perpendicular to the road and make it double-sided, so cars from either direction can see it. So that's what we're proposing, and in terms of type of sign. And in terms of the feel of it, the thing that we think is appropriate to do is try to, one, use some of the similar materials that we're using on the building to bring those out to the street, and use things that are in character with the street and with the building and property itself, and be you know, strong enough visually to be seen, because especially coming from the south, you're onto it pretty quick. You don't have much time. You don't see it like from half a mile away. Coming from the north, you have a little bit more time to see it and read it. But coming from the south, you come around this corner, and because of the elevation and the tightness of the vegetation there, you see it pretty quick. What this proposal is a sign that has a stone base to it with a stone cap there. And then the field itself that the sign is painted on is a steel I-beam, much like over the entrance to the school is an I-beam right there. But because it's double-sided, this isn't stencil cut letters, because obviously it wouldn't work from the other side. It's hand-painted onto a solid I-beam. And it just says Pembroke School. Got to keep it short. We don't even want to fit elementary on there. Pembroke would make it too long, and the letters would get too small, we think. And it would be painted one solid color. And then the notion here was to introduce a wave that's like some of you have seen the floor patterns that are reminiscent of the brook, Penn Brook. It's a river, so it has sort of a wave to it. And it introduces, this one's not in color, but this would be blue for water, but also blue for Georgetown at the bottom, and green for the sign, the sort of a green that goes with the woods. And the letters would be white, painted white. So it stands out nice in contrast, easily readable. And this is fairly tall. What we sketched, I don't know if we can fit something quite this big. This is 15 feet overall. So, you know, it's as wide as this room right there. It probably has to shrink up some when we really look at what's available. might come down to, 10 or 12 feet. We've also added a little circle at the end here with 68, because it's 68 Elm Street is the street address. And for people who use GPS now, or, people get more and more used to finding addresses by numbers, it might be important to have the number there too. But the circle is a way to introduce that circular element, which repeats in the building too. And again, it's a way to loosen up the formality and maybe industrial quality of, a steel I-beam is not quite friendly. People don't think of that as an elementary school, but by putting a wave on it, by putting a circle, by making it somewhat asymmetrical too, we think that's appropriate, as opposed to a symmetrical sign out there. It's kind of anchors it at one end to have something there. This is the Elm Street side. So this is looking at it from the south, driving up here. Obviously looking the other way, everything's reversed, but this is the driveway, so you come in there. So that's where we're at. We did carry an allowance for this in the cost estimate, so that's in there. But we can, take feedback. We can talk further with the site subcommittee meeting too.
Does anyone have any?
That's where we're at.
Any?
And what that looks like too, if people
Can
want to see a little bit closer.
Before you go on then, since no one else does, I do.
I'll say something, but go ahead.
There is a little bit of a rise there too, which is good actually, because you want to get the sign up in the field of vision as you're driving, right there.
I already shared this with Carol and Courtney. I don't happen to think the sign is elegant enough for Elm Street. I just think that Elm Street has, more of a historic feel to it. And if we were putting this sign around the curve and it introduced it, I love everything about it. But because most of the people who are looking at that sign will never even see Pembroke because they're driving by only, I feel that it should, I don't know, I feel like it should be a little more in keeping with the neighborhood. I love the stone base. I have no problem even with the I-beam. That circle, as I described it, it reminds me of some Sunset condominium sign up near the mountains. I don't know. I just think it's too trendy, maybe. Yeah, I just think it's a little too trendy. I guess that's my problem.
I think what I was thinking was, I like the stone base. I think that's
Me
good because
too.
you're bringing some of that from what you had back. But what I'm thinking is maybe not so out there in your face with all these colors and everything, but
Right.
rather if you use like great big sheets of Corten, and you used Corten with the
Like layer
name
it.
cut out, and you do another one on the other side, and then in the center is where you may have a solid piece of metal with the color, so you can get the contrast, so you can see Pembroke from both sides. But the Corten, if you don't know what Corten is steel, but it's you could do flat plate. It's used a lot in landscaping and in buildings too. But
Will it dent if someone hits it?
it's very strong, but it's a rust finish, so it's very, keeping with the nature and the rustic nature and it will look a little bit,
It's a natural finish.
yeah,
basically.
more antiquish too. But it might be a neat way to still use some of your idea, but and I think it'd be a lot more elegant if you could detail that in a way that rather than having the I-beam, an I-beam there that has top pieces and then the center.
I don't even mind if we emulated a little bit the sign they have in front of this building now, the blue one, because I feel as though we should keep the design a little bit more in keeping with the way the town has chosen to go. And it's a brand new sign out front. It's just the blue, they have the granite pole. I love the stone though. I don't think we should give that up. But
Yeah, I don't know if I'd do.
I'm not saying do blue,
yeah,
I'm
I
just
don't
saying
like-
plain. I'm talking plain
Yeah.
rather than greens and
Yeah.
whites and, I mean, it's just,
You just want to make
it's
sure
just
it
my
stands out.
opinion.
I know
that's all.
I know the sign that's there is small now, but nobody even knows that there's a sign there for Pembroke.
Right.
Right.
You can ask people
Except
who
the
live on Elm
neighbors.
Street,
Right.
and they have never even noticed the sign.
Right.
So if we're spending the money and doing that for I mean,
I like the concept.
I think
that it's-
Right.
I mean I do like
Size.
it. I would like it to pop a little, but not too much, but like, you know, like I said, like keep them with the landscape, but you wanna make sure that people see it. Because you said that driveway just pops up on you,
It does.
It does,
you know?
yeah.
It pops up on me and I go to the school every day.
Well, the other thing we want to do too, remember if you look at that,
The introduction.
the site plan, is to suggest, and again, I don't know
That's
if
a
it's
good
technically
idea.
part of this project or not, but to stamp the concrete of the intersection too, so that as you are driving, you do
Right.
see that from a
Right.
distance, you know that
That would be
something's
good.
happening. And knowing it's a residential street, seeing a crosswalk is a pretty good sign that there's a school there. So, you know, that gets you alerted that something's happening up above.
Right.
So,
And I assume that would slow cars down too.
It's not exactly the same, but the feel of the coloration and stuff, if you ever took a look at the memorial, 9/11, what they did there is they used actually a brass, and they antiqued it, but they cut out all the letters, and then they had a backup behind it that was a color that you could read the thing. Very elegant, very nice, very sophisticated actually, but not so much that it's you know
Expensive,
looks-
I mean.
you know, it's more in a
We'll be
in a
selling
real more
letters.
natural. Well, it's more in a natural type feel
Yeah.
of everything, and a softer,
Yeah.
pleasant feel to it.
And, you know, I appreciate that that takes all the materials in that we're using. And the design, I mean, it does, it suits the building perfectly. I just don't think it suits the street. That's more what my objection is. I think it does have to blend in a little bit more with the neighborhood. But I do like some of those ideas of using different materials.
we'll work on some
With that.
options.
Yeah.
and
Do they
the
make these
site
varnished
committee
wood?
meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Do they make these big varnished wood type?
You mean one of our laminated beams, you mean? Use one of those?
Well, not,
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
They make anything and everything.
Carved wood, you mean, where the letters are carved?
I was thinking that too, but it's just then, one, if someone ever destroyed, you know,
Yeah.
vandalism, I was worried about it would, right?
just looking at, you know, I've worked a lot on iron ships, and all I see was rust everywhere, so.
Is there the color? The color that does weather is a rust color.
The Cortez.
Yeah, that's
It's
why the
pre-weathered,
Corten
yeah.
makes some sense.
Rust
Corten
sufficiently
stays-
creates it.
It's
It
already-
actually
Corten
creates a
takes that
skin over
rust
itself,
color
you know?
on.
Yeah, rust
The
over itself.
Corten,
Yeah.
the Corten becomes the protective coating. The rust becomes the protective coating over the steel.
Correct.
And it stays like that
Right.
forever.
So I'm
basically.
just saying that so you do get that rust look.
But you don't get paint and rust and paint and rust. It's all coloration.
It actually looks a lot like wood, George. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
well,
all
that's what I
rust.
was thinking of it. It kind of
has
gives
a-
that
almost a
natural
texture,
feeling to
yeah.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
And are you gonna put bluestone on the top, so all the rust is gonna be on the bluestone?
Yeah, no,
Right, when it drips
I'm not
down.
sure about the bluestone. I like the stone coming up, but bluestone on the top, I think we gotta think of another
Yeah.
thing there.
I think just for myself, I think the stone base, that plinth, everybody seems to like it. I like it as well. I just don't see an I-beam and kids going together.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there money available after the sign to maybe put a LED sign up near the school, like a message board? You know, for current events?
That would be kind of a perfect thing for a change order, you know, as you see how you've spent your contingency. I'm sorry.
Don't hurt Pat.
Pat doesn't like that word. Pat doesn't like that word.
Try not using that very often.
But as you see near the end of the project, how much money you have left, yes, you know, it's not gonna be reimbursable, but, you know, by that point.
I think
as-
it's a great
As you
tool.
said,
And definitely not near the street, but out,
right.
Right.
like,
Yeah, for the
Well, you can
parents.
see when you go up
You
near
have
the
to go up there
fields
by
and
Parents
stuff.
don't regularly pick up their kids, you wanna tell them what activities are coming up.
Might be able to squeeze it into technology.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's something that the teachers would like, right, Margaret?
The last thing that I
Isn't that
wanna
something
say
you guys would
is
like?
that,
The message board?
I think the
An
material.
electronic board that you could change from inside to let people know.
And right now, and I know it's just an early sketch, and so what I see are two forms that are disparate forms that have just been lobbed sort of on, and I don't see those having been worked out yet, but what that opens up is that instead of an I-beam, you know, and you were talking about Pembroke and moving of water, maybe this piece of steel has a very different shape. I don't know what the hell that means, but, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I personally don't think the 68 is all that needed either. 'Cause
No,
You're signing
no.
a GPS, well, if you got the address, you're there when you see the 68, so.
Yeah.
You see that flag waving in the air when it shows up in your GPS, you know that's it.
I don't think anyone would even know that the number of that building is 68.
I didn't.
No, I had no
Michelle
idea.
thought it was on Winter Street. I'm like,
What is 68?
all right, well, since we're
Okay.
talking about this, why don't we go right into lights for this area and light poles? 'Cause I know you were gonna look into that.
Yeah, there was a question about, sort of, not just like the treatment of the driveway, and it kind of relates, but we did include specifically in our cost estimating to date, because I think we showed you at one time the proposed electric site plan for the project, and it kind of stopped, you know, right here, so in terms of adding new light poles. And then we were relying on the existing lights on the driveway, and the existing lights on the driveway look like this, right? There's a, you know, a wood utility pole with lots of wires hanging on it, and then there's an arm. It used to be called a Cobra head kind of fixture. These fixtures actually, I think, have been replaced. I don't know if you know, Peter, right?
Yeah, they're the new
Relatively
LED.
recently.
Those are new, those are what Wayne put in when he went through.
Yeah,
The LED.
and they are LEDs, right?
And it's directional down.
Yes, with a cutoff, in other words, which is like what the planning board likes to see. So originally, we weren't touching these fixtures in our thoughts. That's partly because they are relatively new, but partly because the poles more or less need to stay, because they're carrying the wires, and those wires, remember, are not just serving the school. There are two houses, one here and one here, where the utilities come in and go into those properties too. So this is almost like a public street in that regard. So that's why initially we didn't think about replacing the poles, only replacing the lights. And the reason for replacing the lights would only be for aesthetically matching the fixtures to the new fixtures, which are on, you know, metal poles with a, you know, with an arm. And this, you know, it doesn't look like this, they're more like a black sort of low
Black.
profile, but they are LEDs and they're down fixtures with good cutoff in that regard. So, you know, that's where we're at right now, right? In the base cost, in the, you know, we have new lights and poles starting at this point and the existing retaining there. In the cost estimate, we got the price to replace the lights only, not the poles, just the lights at $9,000. And I don't quite recall how many there's about.
What would the light look like?
It's a little sleeker black. It's not exactly a shoebox because
It's more
it
of a
is
flat
molded,
head.
but
Oh, like the kind you see in a parking lot?
yes,
Kind
that's
of
what we're
sort
talking
of
about. Parking
square?
lot lights,
Okay.
yes, but they're not quite square. But
And what are they on up above here for poles?
they're on black.
Black.
Are they round? I think round poles.
They might have some taper to them.
And I think they're 16 feet high. I'm not positive on that for the most part through there. Which is these are actually higher. I think these are 20 there. So
So are you gonna attach
We
them to
can
the
send
wood
out
poles or
the-
put them on new poles?
for this price, we were going to attach them to these poles,
Yeah.
replace these fixtures. So, but to us, I'm not. 9,000 isn't going to break the bank, but I'm not sure it's great value if you're still left with the pole and all the wires. How much have we improved the aesthetics? Really, I don't know.
And you're not changing the light quality because we'd be
Right.
replacing LED with LEDs.
Yeah.
So are you
So
recommending
it's-
that we change the lights or not change the light?
We're not strong advocates for changing the lights, but that's up to you, really.
Yeah,
So,
we would have different lights once we get further into the road, right?
Right,
So-
starting at about this point, I think it is.
So you're gonna put those on what type of, on,
On round black metal poles, 16
That'll
So it
feet
would
high.
look different anyways because it's a different pole.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They
You
become
know,
a little
they
bit
happen
more
in the parking
decorative.
lots
They look
too.
nice.
They're not
Yes,
just
they look
along the
nice.
road. They're in the parking lot.
electricity will be
Underground.
underground at that point,
We
right?
can email.
Where does
we'll
electricity
email a
go
picture
underground?
To you of what we're
The
using.
electricity
so you
goes
can just-
underground right at this point here. or so, yeah, right, I think it ends
Where
right
the old
now
parking lot
about
is.
here. We're adding one pole to get it to here overhead, and then drops down underground and comes into the site. So from this point on, you're not seeing any overhead wires. And it actually crosses to the other side of the street at some point. It's on the right-hand side as you come up, but at some point it jumps over to the left-hand side here.
So when
Or
it
the other way
jumps,
around. The left-hand side as you're driving in, and then it jumps over to the right-hand side.
so when it jumps, is that when you switch to the new pole?
No.
No, they still come in a ways. It's down here, we switch at that point.
So we
And
need.
in the parking
so-
lot here, so I mean,
Alright.
you would see them right here. You know, there's a couple poles
Yeah.
in this parking lot, a couple here, this way.
So we need to make a decision on whether we want to switch out the lights or leave the lights that are there now, which are relatively new.
How many are there?
I am
Are there 3, 4?
It's about 6 or 7.
Or 6?
positive
Okay.
that if you don't switch those lights out, that what will happen when you drive into this brand-new project, they will stand out as leftovers. They will stand out as these little, and people may not intellectually right off the bat get it, but it will look like an unfinished, forgotten piece. And if you at least come in with the same head and an arm, it will become very clear that someone consciously paid attention to it and didn't just forget about it.
All right,
Absolutely.
so you think we should just take off the new lights and put the
Yeah,
black ones on?
I don't
for the
think you
continuity?
ever were thinking the poles would get
It's
moved.
$9,000, I mean.
Well,
Very
I would
least.
probably, two thoughts go to my mind here. One is, I think you wanna make a conscious decision on where that wire goes
I'm
underground,
with you.
rather than just that
That's what I'm
last
thinking
pole.
too.
Because it's not gonna feed anything else but this, so you could make a decision that from here down, you're gonna be underground, because then you're experiencing nature better, and you don't
Yeah.
have these wires
There
overhead.
is a branch, we should point out, right? There's a branch overhead that services these guys,
Yeah.
the fields that come this way too.
Right.
So it's overhead to there. You're right, once you're past that point, it's not
So-
servicing anything else.
So sort of figure that out, I mean, this
Yeah.
might be a logical point, and then
Yeah.
you start your
The poles now go to the parking lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to the teacher's parking lot,
So,
right?
but you might end it, you might end it here, because that seems to be like a logical place to end it, and then you start up your poles. And then I agree with you in that I think that it's gonna look like it's a leftover, and it's not gonna look like it's part of the project if you do that. The only thing is I'd like to see, maybe you get Photoshop or something, show us what it's
The new
gonna,
head on the old
yeah, show
pole.
us what
We
it's gonna
can-
look like, because
I
if it
can-
looks terrible,
We'll
why
do
do
it.
it? And then I would ask for, while you're doing this exercise, is to ask for a price of what it would cost to put in poles instead of, I mean, leave those alone, because they'll still have telephone poles there, but to have actually the
Don't you think it would be
vertical
too
poles.
cluttered?
Where would you put the
I don't know, you'd
poles,
have to
though?
see.
Jeff,
You'd have to
one
see,
of
if
the-
they're all on one side, you might put the lights on the other side.
We're a little tight on the property line on either side with the
Yeah.
retaining wall that's there.
I don't think we can go to the other side of the
It's-
driveway.
One thing you remind me of too is that those light fixtures that are currently there are mounted at 20 feet
They're
high or
high,
something like
yeah.
that. And the ones that you have in the site are it's like 16 or
Yeah.
something. So the height and the photometrics and coverage is another issue.
Yeah. The one improvement too that would be if they went black is during the daytime. One of the reasons we select black fixtures is because they disappear.
Why don't we
But
take
the
those down
aluminum
and paint them
colored
black?
ones,
Yeah,
you
they're
do
pop.
see during the day. They're a little
Could
more
you use them
intrusive,
someplace else?
even when the light's not
Light
on at
department,
night.
so
They
Well, that was the other
definitely-
question I was
Could
gonna
we
say
use
is see if the light department can use these to replace
Oh, I know
ones that
they
aren't
would.
replaced yet.
I know they would do that, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if it's that big of a deal, paint them black.
I mean, if the light department could reuse them.
Yeah.
I
That-
don't
that's
have a
kinda
problem
tough to
with
do in the
tying
field,
them.
Peter, to get it
Yeah.
right. It start peeling pretty quick, I think.
Yeah, and
Or
then
snow.
it goes back to what Rob was saying, then it's like you're.
Yeah, even Mickey Mouse.
We'll get it anodized so that, the.
But if you
peeling
can use them
process-
elsewhere in town, that's the best.
But I would,
Yeah.
see if you can Photoshop it up and,
Yeah.
just.
It's a good idea.
But I like your
Look, so-
idea as well.
We'll do that.
Cut off of where you go underground.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
continue the new poles.
Rather than
Yeah,
just
have it
being
further
where
out.
it was, just
Yeah.
make it a conscious
Right,
design
I
decision.
agree.
Yeah, right at the break where you enter,
Yeah.
if you can.
Okay, so
Good.
I guess everyone
That's good
is pretty
direction,
much on
okay.
board then with,
Okay, thank you.
moving that on. So that resolves.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, is there anything else you need resolved?
Yeah, there were a couple things, Chuck.
You're gonna approve us to go, to submit this to MSBA on the 26th?
Oh, would you like that? Would you like that approval?
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be good, yeah.
And there's extra copies here if anyone needs a full copy of the approved number.
Okay.
Or the pre-approved.
Right, and Chuck, what else do you want to approve?
I have the same thing.
Okay, you do something.
Pre-qualification, there were 91 subcontractors that submitted packages. And this is not a single handout that you've got double-sided. 6 general contractors. Of the 91 subcontractors, we only received 1 elevator subcontractor. This has become an ongoing joke in the industry. It happens on every job. We don't know why, it just happens. The law requires that we re-advertise it again. So we re-advertise it again and ask for pre-qualifications. I discussed this with Mike Farrell today and the attorneys and got recommendations on to move forward as we expected we would. We need a vote actually of this committee to authorize us to re-advertise this for elevator subcontractors only. That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
So would anyone like to make a motion that we approve the re-advertising for an elevator contractor?
So moved.
Only.
So moved.
Second.
All, okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Done. All right, so now we're ready to vote on allowing MSBA, not MSBA, allowing municipal and DRA to submit our 90% documents to MSBA
Based on the cost review of tonight.
based on the cost review of this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Would you like anything else?
Adjournment.
Unless somebody wants to go through each one of these tabs, we're
Yeah.
fully prepared
Yeah,
to
can we
walk
think
through
through
those.
Very nicely color-coded, okay?
Anybody second?
Oh, wait a minute. I would just like to remind you that our next meeting is July 9th, before we adjourn.
All in favor?
With, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Carol. Okay, so what is, it is freezing.